Well, good morning and good afternoon to everyone from wherever you are. My name is LaMonica Shelton, and I'm with the Administration for Children and Families in the Office of Family Assistance. I work out of Region 4, which is the Atlanta location. And many of you work with the Office of Family Assistance staff in Region 4, as well as staff in Region 5, which is located in Chicago, Region 6, which is Dallas, Region 7, which is Kansas City, and Region 8, which is Denver. While we will have an official welcome shortly, I would like to welcome all of our participants, including tribal TANF programs and Native Employment Works programs from across the Southeast, the Midwest, the Southwest, and part of the Northwest. Also like to welcome our partners from the Bureau of Indian Affairs to today's meeting, which is entitled Moving Forward, Weaving Stories of Perseverance During COVID-19. I think we are all in for a real treat for these next few days. But before we officially begin, I want to recognize that this is the first time that we are all coming together virtually like this. While there are so many benefits to meeting in person, we just all know that that couldn't happen this year. But we still want to be able to come together to exchange ideas. And so we needed to do so in a virtual capacity. And there are some realities that come along with this. So many of us spend a good portion of our day in front of a computer, or what I call the little box, and even a lot of our time on camera. And so many of us are still working from home. And I want you to know that the Administration for Children and Families recognizes that as we participate in this virtual meeting, that we might have children at home with us, we might have pets nearby, we might have a spouse in earshot who's also on a conference call, or whatever the case might be in your environment. So all that to say is that these just really aren't normal times. And you will hear quite a bit of rich information between now and Thursday. So during the meeting, speakers will have their camera on when it's their time, and we encourage you to use yours if you would like to and when you are comfortable. But it's also okay if you need to turn it off or you would rather turn it off. While we have a number of scheduled breaks built into the agenda, please, please, please don't hesitate to keep a drink nearby or snacks nearby or whatever you need nearby to keep you energized. Get up and stretch where you are or when you feel the need to, if you feel like you've been sitting too long. And also, just please do whatever you need to do to take care of you. So I just want to thank you for your time today. Now I'd like to welcome my colleague, Steve McLean, who many of you have been hearing from BLH Technologies, Inc. And he's going to review some important logistical information that will help us through the next 3 days. Steve?
Thanks, LaMonica. I want to keep this brief because we have several interesting and exciting speakers, far more interesting and exciting than me. But we wanted to do a couple housekeeping announcements just so that everyone is aware of what's available in terms of resources and technology. And some of you saw this during the test session, so I apologize if this is a repeat, but we want to make sure everyone has the same information. Bizzabo is the sort of the hub for the 3 days of meetings. It's the platform that houses all of the material. You can see the agenda there, speaker information, bios, and session materials. So let me show you really quickly what that would look like. I think some of you joined through Bizzabo and others joined through Zoom. This is the Bizzabo agenda page. And as you can see, all of the speakers are listed along with sessions. The idea for this particular agenda is to allow information and speaker information and attachments to live on throughout the meeting. So at any point, you can click on a session to get more information about the session. You can click on a speaker to get more information about that speaker. And you can scroll down and upload attachments from the sessions. So this is the PowerPoint that would be used later by Denise, for example. This is available for all of the sessions throughout the 3 days. This information will be available to you during the meeting and also for 30 days after the meeting. So at any point, you are welcome to go back and download something if you missed it and want to share it with your friends and colleagues. If you have any questions about that, just let us know. We'll also, for those folks who were a little bit maybe hesitant to use Bizzabo or a little bit scared, trust me, I understand. I was scared of Bizzabo at first. It's a scary word, Bizzabo. We'll have some information that we can send to you through the chat box in terms of other ways to access resources. And then Zoom, I think most folks are familiar with Zoom for one way or another by now. As LaMonica mentioned, for the most part, folks will be muted, but questions can be submitted through the chat box at any point. Whether you have resources you want to share, or if there was a question you have for a presenter, or if you just want to say hello and check in, give a shout out from where you are, or if you need assistance with your technology, all of those things can be submitted through the chat box, and we will be happy to help you. We want to keep this as an engaging dialogue throughout the meeting. So folks will be having conversations back and forth in the chat box throughout, and we encourage you to contribute to that. There will be a couple poll questions that you'll see where you can vote directly on the screen just to get your input on the sessions and what the presenters might discuss. On certain sessions, you'll be separated into breakout rooms for more intimate discussions, and we'll go through that when that happens. And then at the end of the meeting, I want to make sure everyone is aware that we'll have an evaluation survey, a link to an evaluation where we can get your feedback about the meeting. So please, throughout the meeting, keep track of what you like and what you would like to hear more about, and perhaps some ideas for future meetings, and you'll get the opportunity to share all of that with us at the end of the meeting. Again, if you have any questions, feel free to shout me out in the chat box, and I will turn it back over to LaMonica. Okay, LaMonica, can you hear me? LaMonica might be frozen. All right, we're gonna do a little bit of an audible here. We are honored to have an opening prayer by Coco. She said her friends call her Coco, so I'm gonna go ahead and call her Coco. Fleet, if you wouldn't mind, would you please bless us with the opening prayer? Oh, Coco, I think you have to unmute. You're on mute right now. There you go.
All right.
Thank you.
All right. You're welcome. As I get a message, porque how will I get started? Mujanet the heroes up on Balata, Mado Chicados. Mo, I leg it a heated Pomata, Mado Chicados. Here, Omao got a road calgi, a dilo got. Omao got a meted us. Mado Chicados here. Omao got a dilo got. Mo, Omao got. No better to go walk hoga, figure better to go walk hoga, in Jugo, in a hoga, walk hoga. Omao got a meted us. Mado Chicados, Mujanetta. He goes up on Balata. As I get it, Gina, I guess I'm going to say yours, boys. Amen.
Thank you. Amen. Thank you. LaMonica.
Yes, I'm back. Thank you, Ms. Coco. Appreciate that.
You're welcome.
Next, we will have our official welcome and opening remarks from someone whom I enjoy working with, and that's my colleague, Denise Edwards. Denise is the branch chief for the Division of Tribal TANF Management in the Office of Family Assistance, or as we say, OFA, which is also within the Administration for Children and Families. Denise oversees the activities related to the OFA tribal programs. Denise's full bio is available on the website. Denise?
Shwant Eskenahay. Greetings, everyone. Thank you, LaMonica, for the introduction. Again, my name is Denise Edwards, and I'm the branch chief for the Division of Tribal TANF Management in the Office of Family Assistance in the Administration for Children and Families. I'm originally from the Tuscarora Nation, which is located about 10 miles north of Niagara Falls, New York. I'm a member of the Beaver Clan. I currently work in the Region 8 office in Denver, Colorado. I'd like to honor and acknowledge that the land on which I reside and work is the traditional territory of the Ute, Cheyenne, and Arapaho peoples. I recognize the 48 contemporary tribal nations that are historically tied to the lands that make up the state of Colorado. I also wish to honor elders past, present, and future, and those who have stewarded this land throughout the generations. On behalf of the Office of Family Assistance and our Division Director for Tribal TANF Management and Regional Operations, Dan Kautzdal, it is my distinct pleasure to welcome everyone to the Regions 4 through 8 virtual conference. I'd especially like to thank the tribal representatives from Native Employment Works, Tribal TANF, and the 477 programs for joining our virtual conference. Given that March is Social Work Month, I wanted to share our appreciation to all of the staff working directly with the families. We all value the work that you all do with the tribal families and the communities that you serve, and we recognize the hard work you all do on a daily basis, so we want to thank you for that. We'll be spending the next 3.5 days together, focused on our conference theme of moving forward, weaving stories of perseverance during COVID-19. We're thrilled to bring everyone together, facilitating peer interactions where we can learn from one another, explore actionable ideas together. In recognition of the importance of oral traditions in our Native communities, we'd like to start our virtual conference by exploring more about the stories that inspire, provide insight, and generally celebrate employment and training successes across Indian country. Throughout the virtual sessions, we'll be weaving these specific stories throughout our time together, grounding all of us in a common understanding and reminding all of us why we are all here and why the work that you all put in every day is so important to the families that you serve. I'd like to introduce the first featured story from Great and Rancheria Tribal TANF. Jasmine came into the program as a single mother of 2 who struggled with serious health problems throughout her time in TANF. Despite medical battles, she remained motivated to pursue her dream of becoming a cosmetologist. She experienced further challenges pursuing her studies and internship due to COVID, but that didn't set her back. Jasmine continued to educate herself virtually and currently is now a few months away from becoming a licensed cosmetologist. I'd like to now turn it over to Karen.
Are we hearing the video now? Okay.
Well, my name is Jasmine Romero. I am a mother of 2. When I first heard of TANF, I was going through somewhat of a separation with my cousin. This was about now 5 years ago, almost 5 years ago. At that moment, you know, I've heard that they can help out, and you know, if you want like educational goals or helping, you know, there's just all these things that they can help out with families. But unfortunately, because of the money he was making, and at that time, I barely started working too, because I was a stay-at-home mom. I mostly took care of my son and my daughter. And my son actually, the other difficulty part of that was my son had a disability. So there was a lot of, you know, up and down with that part, because at the age 3, he kind of stopped talking. And that was really hard on both of us as parents. But just, you know, as a mom, you kind of feel you let your kid down when something out of nowhere happens, and you feel like, it wasn't you, was it something you did, or you didn't do enough? So that in itself, there was already that hardship on me as a mom. And so at that time, we didn't qualify. So, you know, it was kind of like, it kind of made me feel like, oh, okay, well, here's another door shut in our face, you know, because we're, you know, going through this, and we're going through a divorce, or going to separation at that time, actually. And it was just like, everything kind of felt like there wasn't no help for me at the end. You know, there wasn't no way of me being able to, if, you know, with that separation with my husband, you know, was there going to be a way for me to succeed and be able to provide for my kids myself? And, you know, and so we ended up just separating. And at that time, I decided, you know what, I'm going to go try and see if I could do this by myself, see if I can go qualify for TANF by myself. And at that time, I think with Carmela was my coworker, or my, my caseworker. And she was really, there's something that she saw in me that I didn't see. And it's been a while that it's like, you know, when you're teared down so much and you have so much obstacles on you as a mom itself and just as a woman, you know, trying to be someone else's, you know, backbone, someone else's wall, you forget about yourself. You forget about what you can bring. And that's one thing I did. I forgot a lot about me and focused more on my kids, focused what I needed for them and not about me. So on that too, she was able to help me get qualified for TANF, help me, not just that, but guide me in a place that I can heal innerly and spiritually too, because that's this whole of the separation at that time with my ex-husband really did hit me rock bottom. And it was really hard to see if I was able to, am I going to able to do this by myself and on my own, you know? And that's one role I could say TANF really, really, and I really advise any woman that's struggling with kids or not kids, just herself, you know, and want to get out of something bad or feel like, again, they have a purpose, I can say go with TANF because these ladies, this program, and everybody in there has something to give you to help you remind your worth, your self-worth. And that's like the main thing I got out of this at the end. It's like, I can do what I want to do. I can get what I want to get, but it's like, sometimes you need that little extra help, and that's okay. And it's totally okay to ask for that help, you know, and that's the one thing is, for me, it was like a little bit, was like, I can do this without help. I can do this, but it's like, you need a little help, and that's okay. It's okay to ask for that guidance. It's okay to ask for that. Hey, can this help me? Can you guys do this for me? Or is there any way possible I can get this program in, or, you know, for the kids or anything for yourself? It's like, it's okay to ask for help. That's definitely one reason how I got into TANF is because I needed to find a way to be able to sustain not just my kids, but me, and have them see that, you know, that look what mommy did, look what mommy can do, you can do it too, you know, kind of have them model after someone that, okay, I've gone through a lot, and it's been quite a struggle. I had to beat thyroid cancer, and then I had, you know, a car accident that, you know, just kind of stopped a lot of the process that I'm going through right now with my program. And I had to get an emergency gallbladder removed. I mean, there's been so many obstacles, I can say that, you know, that I could say, you know what, I'm done, I'm tired, I have to stop all this. But in reality, I'm really happy that I had all these girls, and I had Laura, Carmela, Beatrice there to just help me, guide me, and understand my pain and struggle. You know, it's hard when somebody can't understand what you're going through, or, you know, some of the obstacles you go through without knowing exactly what you're going through, and then still be there to support you. That's, you know, that's something in itself, a very unique situation. And that these ladies are just not there to be your caseworker. They're there to be your friend and family. And that's what makes it really workable. That's what makes it really an amazing, like, team that you have behind you, because there really is a big team behind you. It's just you don't realize that. So again, something comes up and you're like, oh my God, how am I going to pay this? Oh my God, how am I going to get out of this? Oh my God, how am I going to go to this program? Or how am I going to go to school? How am I going to go finish without that support, you know, in itself? And that's the thing too. It's like, you know, for my future, I want to build something. I want to build in, not just, oh yeah, I got my cosmetology license. Yay, that's it, I'm done. No, I want to build more. I want to get more. So that's one of my biggest gratitude of having this program, is that they're able to help you, guide you. So when I'm done with it, I can still keep going. I can still keep going. And, you know, and that's really what I want to say. Thank you for that, because without this little piece of the puzzle, there's no way I can finish my whole collage. Well, my name is Jen.
Well, hello. As the video goes off, I wanted to just thank Denise for those opening remarks and for the introduction to our first video with Weaving the Stories, where we had an opportunity to meet Jasmine. It was such a thrill and a joy to visit with Jasmine as she was doing the taping of the video, and her enthusiasm to overcome the challenges that she experienced really came out with our conversations with Jasmine, and we really appreciate her taking the time to share that with us. We want to move next into continue our visioning of are we moving forward, and we have our keynote speaker who's going to visit with us about re-envisioning programs and moving forward, reflections and motivations. And it's my pleasure to introduce Jennifer Ratcliffe, who is an impact strategist and entrepreneur, and she is the founder of the Stratum Consulting, a strategy consulting agency. She is a citizen of the Cherokee Nation, and she lives right outside of Tulsa. And you can find her full information, as Steve said, on the BizBo, where you can find all of her biography information. But I want to just go in and welcome Jennifer, and thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much, Karen, and thank you all for inviting me here to be with you today. I'm so grateful for this opportunity. I'm calling in, as Karen said, from the Cherokee Nation territory, where I live with my 5-year-old daughter. I've spent my entire career working with tribal governments and for Native people. Today, I'm here with you as an advocate who's passionate about supporting health and education and social safety nets that help move families out of poverty. I want to start the morning off today with a little bit of with a few questions, some self-reflection questions. It's not a formal poll. You're not going to write these down anywhere, but I want you to be honest with yourself about them. When you woke up this morning, were you inspired by the people that you were going to be seeing today, whether that was at the office, your family, your mother, as Jasmine said, her kids were inspired by her, your friends, maybe even your mechanic? I know sometimes that's a very important part of our lives. So was there someone who inspired you today when you woke up? Did you start your day inspired by the activities or the things that you had planned today? I don't necessarily mean with work, but with any part of your life, at home, here for this meeting, getting excited about that. Some of you probably did, and some of you probably didn't. And it's okay either way. Today and in the days leading up to this, I've been inspired by your work. I've read the stories of some of the clients like Jasmine's, and some of which the rest of which you're going to hear, I think, throughout this week. Their perseverance, determination, and personal integrity is astounding. And you gave that to them. And Jasmine hit that really hard on the head. She was inspired and empowered by her own caseworkers, who were more than just caseworkers. My goal with you today is to clear out some of those cobwebs and help you build a more inspired mindset to focus on the inspiration that we can find in our daily lives, to feel safe and heard at work, and to feel fulfilled at the end of your day. What's more, when you feel inspired and fulfilled, those sentiments radiate to those around you, and especially in this line of work, to those whose lives you touch every day, like Jasmine's. Today, I want us to explore how you can start your day every day inspired, why you should acknowledge your dreams and pursue those dreams, and the impact that this openness has in your work and on those around you, from your colleagues to your families to your clients. Why? Because we live in a world of opportunity, and now I believe even more so. A dedicated shift to seeing and pursuing the infinite possibilities available to us at home and at work, and even for your clients, will be the trademark of these times. Simon Sinek, a trained ethnographer and author, and most importantly, an optimist, in his 2018 book, The Infinite Games, set out to explore our function in and response to the world as a juxtaposition between the infinite and the finite. The finite mindset is focused on winning and identifying strategies for minimizing loss. But the infinite mindset's objective, in contrast, is about keeping to play, perpetuating the game. Our world is wrought with finite situations and scenarios, sporting events sort of being the most most prominent. They have players, fixed rules, agreed upon objectives. Someone wins and someone loses. But most often in life, we're in a space where there are no definitive timeframes. There aren't winners and losers. Just because I get a job doesn't mean that you don't. You might not be able to get the job I get, but you can get a job. Our everyday world does not have fixed rules. It doesn't have known players or agreed upon objectives. Our world is not a zero-sum game. We have infinite possibilities. And it's these infinite possibilities that we're exploring today. As I mentioned briefly earlier, sports are often finite. Are there other examples that anyone can think of that are finite? Maybe you're thinking of business, but one of the core tenets of a finite game is that there's a clear winner and a clear loser. In business, in the barest of definitions, you can't win at it. You can't win business. Most of our world is infinite: relationships, parenting, and business. The point of the relationships is to keep them going. There aren't rules for parenting. We do the best we can with the resources and knowledge we have. And in business, we may have the best product today, but that can change tomorrow with a new competitor or just a new definition of what the best product is. Love is an infinite game. You never stop loving. Making the world a better place, learning, these are all examples of infinite games. No matter how successful we are in life, when we die, none of us are declared a winner of it. Sinek identified in his work 5 key tenets for moving towards infinite mindedness. But today I'm going to focus on one specifically: embracing existential flexibility, cultivating an openness towards a better future. No matter how far you've traveled down a path, you have to be willing to make profound strategic shifts. But before we go further, I want to explore your own willingness to welcome this infinite mindset within yourself. So in the packets that you got, probably through Bizzaboo, there was a small set of Live Inspired worksheets. If you have those, you can take them out. If not, just turn to a clean sheet of paper, but please make it a clean sheet of paper, nothing on it. This exercise will help take you to that first step towards an infinite mindset through dreaming. Not only the kind in your sleep, the good ones anyways, but the kind where you sit and think about all of the opportunities available in your world, your goals, your desires, your dreams, and which ones you want to achieve. From the minute, like hanging a coat hook by your door, to the life-altering, like paying off student debt or a mortgage. Right now, there are probably things flitting across your minds. Write them down, write them all down. Hold on to these. It doesn't matter how unachievable they seem, how silly they feel. This is your infinite mind showing you that the world is full of opportunity, of options, and of experiences. Keep writing them down as they come to you. If possible, don't stop until you've reached 100 or even more. And that is very hard to get to. But save this paper only for your dreams. Take notes somewhere else this week. I want you to keep writing and I want you to keep dreaming, and I'm going to keep going. When was the last time someone asked you what you wanted to be when you grew up? When were you asked what your dreams were? It's probably been a while, if it has been since your 8th birthday, or maybe since you left your childhood home. When was the last time your supervisor or colleague asked you how you wanted to serve your clients? You've probably considered this on your own, but have you had the opportunity to share your ideas with others who can support you in making that a reality? The truth is, at a certain point in life, we stop asking these kinds of questions. We stop allowing ourselves the opportunity to dream once we've established the path that we're on. Once we start down a given path, we forget to dream ourselves. And then what's more, we forget to encourage others to dream. We settle into a finite mindset, focusing on the deadlines in front of us and working within the parameters that we have. I want to stay here for a moment longer for each of you to think about what your dreams are. Do you have hopes of going to a specific vacation spot? We probably all have that one. Of spending more time with your family? Probably less so that one. Of having more of a specific impact on your world, or maybe painting more regularly? If you're willing to share, I want you to just drop in the chat box a few of your dreams about anything and all things, at home, at work, in your hobbies, your faith, your passion. Mine are all over the place. I wanted to get a piano keyboard so I could play regularly and teach my daughter how to play. I want to be more decisive. I'm an overanalyzer about everything. Buying laundry detergent is debilitating for me. I want to be a better advocate for what I believe in. So some of you probably are hoping to save for your child's education, to go on vacation anywhere that's not our own homes, or to get the rattle in your car fixed. All of these are very valid, and they're very important. So if you have any you would like to share, please do share. I'll read a few of them out as we go. These dreams, your desires, they are your potential. We are laying the foundation for opening your mind, for shifting it to a more infinite-minded state. You may not achieve all of these dreams, and if you're really stretching your mind, you likely won't. As we move through life, we must continuously embrace the shifts and turns that life throws at us. We must remain ever flexible. We've got remodel the bathroom, choose a weekend adventure, being a better mom, wife, and sister. These are great. And these are what we're talking about, just being mindful about what our dreams and our hopes are for us, to play the piano, to travel more, to continue to build my business. I used to have dreams of participating in extreme activities. I was one broken down plane ride away from going skydiving about 15 years ago. If I had done this exercise then, that would have been on my dream list, probably with some other equally harrowing experiences. Today, not a chance that that's on my dream list. I'm the only thing that my daughter has, and I can't imagine purposefully doing something that has that potential to harm me. But this is the point. Maintaining flexibility in your dreams is what we have to do. Being agile to respond to the new experiences in our path is a requirement. The journey that takes you toward reaching your potential and achieving your dreams will continually alter the path that you're on. It will shift your desires. The act of moving forward changes what the path looks like driving down a road. The scenery always shifts, and at some point, you'll hit different climates, different seasons, different people, all of which alter your response to the situation and change your experiences. I'm going to read a few more. Be the best mom for my teen daughter, lose weight and improve my health. I can't scroll up fast enough, so I'll leave it. Learning sign language, that's one of my goals for me and my daughter as well. But we aren't in this alone, and that's important to remember. This journey, your potential, is intricately intertwined with the potential of each person in your orbit, at work, at home, at church, and everywhere else. Your journeys are elaborately connected. You may have collectively established a destination where all of you are generally pointed towards, but the truth is the destination is unknown because it's altered with every passing day. No matter what destination or goals we've established, our journey there is way more important. How we move forward and how we get there matters so much more than reaching the destination, if we ever do. I can imagine that your lists, as we've seen, are filled with personal and professional aspirations of changing or improving relationships at home with friends or with colleagues, of adventures, of mundane tasks and to-dos that you've been needing to get done. We saw examples of all of those in the chat. Each of these are a signal of the potential within you and of your willingness to open your mind to the possibilities that life has to offer. This is the infinite mind shift. I'm certain that your list contains aspects of your personal life and your professional life. As humans, and especially Americans, we often don't make a distinction between the two. And I know in this line of work, I wager to say that it's impossible to distinctly separate your own life experiences from those that you have at work. That's just the nature of being in this field and being in this work. Because of this, your potential, your opportunities, and your achievements, your infinite mindset are inseparable between the home you and the work you. And this is a critical point. You are the critical point. When you shift your own mindset to focus on this infinite growth and truly embrace the journey, we transform our environment. We change the perspectives of those we encounter. of those we serve sharing this mindset of embracing the world of infinite possibilities. I want to go back for a second to Simon Sinek, very briefly. In a pep talk he had with his staff this past year, he said that these are not unprecedented times. The world's upheaval right now, this pandemic. I know that that's probably a shock to hear because it feels like it. But what he meant was that in terms of the drastic changes required of ourselves, of our organizations, and of our services throughout these times, this isn't the first drastic event that has transformed our society and it won't be the last. The internet is probably the most salient of your time. And I would, of my time, I'm sorry. And I would argue that the developing world's response to internet technologies was the most astounding. Technology allowed them to bypass physical infrastructure that we in America still rely on. Electric lines, telephone lines, cable lines. But there are no landlines for telephones. There's minimal cable lines, and electricity doesn't necessarily come from a community grid or a substation. My 5-year-old daughter can now FaceTime with her grandparents in Rwanda. They don't have running water, and their electricity comes from a few solar panels, but we can WhatsApp them anytime the younger cousins with the phone are around. The point is, the place we find ourselves in is not unprecedented. Was this more sudden? Yes. Was this scarier? Definitely. To move forward, to be successful, and to ensure the success of our programs and our clients, we have to exercise our infinite mindset. We have to embrace these existential flexibilities. We have to take a deep look into how we will do what we're doing in a different world, because our world is different. When we pivot and when we figure out a way through it, we will come out better and our clients will thrive. But to do this, we have to explore the infinite possibilities. This week, you'll be hearing from people across the country who are doing this, from revising coaching and motivation techniques to rethinking client engagement in a new world. Maybe within your own program, likely, you had to pivot your intake process. It probably moved online, and your work every day has probably moved to the phone or perhaps Zoom. You'll learn from people who drastically changed their communities through partnerships and collaboration that helped connect their community to the internet. Take this time to truly process what you're hearing, sit with it, and explore how these ideas could reshape your own community and your own work. While these times have been dire for many, for most probably, now is the time for us to explore how these ideas could reshape our own community and our own work. I can only imagine the struggles you've all had during this time. We already heard from Jasmine, one of your clients, about how she's having to navigate her regular life and everyday life, and then think about that on top of what's happened in the world, navigating a new normal. In this new normal, it's so critical that we take care of ourselves. Jasmine also said that she hadn't been taking care of herself, and you provided her that opportunity. This week, you will also explore how you can identify your own stress and burnout and learn strategies yourself to interrupt that trauma for you, especially you that you're going through, because you are going to be exercising your resiliency muscles, hopefully with your mindset turned towards the infinite possibilities. I know that help for TANF programs and the families you serve in the form of a stimulus was mostly non-existent until the most recent American Rescue Plan. And I know that that's not truly enough to address your programs and clients' needs, but it is a start. It's an opportunity. At the same time, there are many other social programs and individual efforts that were bolstered through all of these COVID stimulus packages: unemployment insurance, behavioral health services, veteran services, childcare, Head Start, individual stimulus checks. And now there's a new conversation taking flight about raising the minimum wage. While these probably and definitely don't directly put resources into your program, they are efforts that can be useful in helping you serve your clients. It feels at this time like the whole world is getting a reset of sorts. We have opportunities to reimagine what everything looks like. So many programs, services, and jobs have had to turn to virtual platforms, and many probably won't go back. If so much of our world can make such an immediate and drastic change, the opportunity for us to do that is at our fingertips. This week, you have multiple panel discussions dedicated specifically to exploring what flexibilities are available to you. Bring your whole self to these sessions, an open mind, maybe a fresh sheet of paper to capture some of your ideas and dreams. Because now is the time to dream, to imagine the infinite possibilities that we haven't explored before. So often we take what we have, the funding streams that are there, the established programs, and we try to fit them into what we have of these already solid structures. We push families to look what they can accomplish within these boundaries. But what if we took away all those limits? What if we took away all those boundaries? That's what the pandemic has done for us. It has given us this opportunity to truly explore what our communities need and what they want. To give us the opportunity to truly explore what our families need and what our families want. Beginning with our wants and our desires opens up so much more opportunity. So where do we go from here? What can we carry with us this week and into the future? I'll get there, but I want to start with a story, one that's being written as we speak. In Southern California, a tribal childcare program has identified an incredible opportunity to help fill the chasm that has appeared in their community. As was widely publicized and is true in this California community, childcare programs and family childcare homes closed in mass. They simply couldn't survive the massive breaks in service. At the same time, employees from across the field, across all fields, were being laid off. This tribal childcare program will be reaching out to their TANF program to explore the opportunity of creating a childcare training program. This training program will help individuals get the necessary credentials to become a childcare provider or a teacher. And the added bonus of this training program, the trainees will get paid as they go through the training. Think of it like a paid apprenticeship program. Knowing these two streams of funding, I expect that the funding will be provided through childcare, but TANF will be the partner to help fill those seats of the training. Where did this idea come from? Well, it came from another tribal childcare program that started this same program, but they did it directly without any TANF partnership. That option wasn't available to them. But in Southern California, they saw the opportunity to build these bridges, to explore the possibilities and to embrace the flexibilities of the world that we now live in. Let's start not by looking at what is available to us right now, but what we would dream to be available. In a world of opportunity, the possibilities are infinite if we only look deep enough and open our eyes wide enough to see what's there. This week, you'll hear stories from your clients about perseverance, determination, and personal integrity. We've already heard one today. One client who pursued her dream despite the odds against her, one who saw the importance of her own struggle but kept her mind focused on her goal, using supportive services only as a last resort, and one who said yes to every option that was presented in front of her, and she created her own path from those options. You'll be exploring how to operate in a new world, how to serve in a new world, and how to coach and empower in a new world. You'll be honing in on how to just be in this new world, recovering from your own stress and your own traumas that this has caused and addressing it head on. You'll be shown ideas from which you might innovate within your own community. Where we are at now is our time. It's the only time and space we have, but it's also the perfect time to innovate, to embrace flexibilities, and to explore the infinite possibilities in front of us. Let's imagine not only how we can serve our clients, our communities, and our tribe with what we have, but also how we can connect, collaborate, and innovate beyond our own program's resources, reaching across the community to create opportunities that might not otherwise be available to us. Let's embrace the flexibilities that have been allowed for us and for our programs and for other programs and organizations throughout the community to realize the infinite possibilities. Today, more than ever, our world is being turned upside down. We have an opportunity to truly imagine what impact we want to have, to explore how we want to show up in the world, and how we want to inspire those around us. Let's embrace the flexibilities afforded to us during this time. Let's open our minds to the infinite possibilities ahead of us. Tomorrow, when you wake up, take a moment to dream of those possibilities, to dream of those inspirations. As you move through the day and into the future, don't quit until you're living the life you dream of. Thank you for having me today. It was really an honor to be here, and I wish you the greatest of weeks in exploring the possibilities.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Jennifer. That was really inspiring and wonderful to actually take some time to reflect for all of ourselves, and in the chat box find some kindred spirits on dreams that we have for ourselves and that we don't necessarily think about every day, and then thinking about taking that time to re-envision and take the time to re-envision where our programs are going, where our relationships are going, and where we would like our future to be. So thank you so much. And I am Louisa Jones, and I am a senior director with ICF, and we are so excited to start the next panel. We are going to have a fireside chat with several of your colleagues in the regions, and we're going to be building upon what we heard with Jasmine's story and what we heard with Jennifer's motivational pieces that she was sharing in terms of taking that opportunity to really kind of think about how to connect, collaborate, and find opportunities. And so this fireside chat, we are going to have several of your colleagues talk about how during COVID and currently kind of thinking forward, how they have been innovative, shown some flexibility and innovation, and with all their administrative tools, and whether that be with their caseworkers, whether that be with their participants, and with their communities to respond in some unique ways. So we're really excited to have everyone on. So all of you have had some time to kind of rethink and revision how to provide your services during the last year. It's been just over a year since everything kind of got turned upside down, but you've been responsive to your staff, you've been responsive to your clients and communities, and all of you have done this in various ways, whether it be social distancing, staggering your clients, staggering with your fellow workers, wearing masks, finding new ways of communicating, whether that's more phone, drop boxes, social media, etc. So we're really excited here. I'm going to introduce our speakers today, and then what we're going to hear from each one for about 5 or 7 minutes to kind of give a little overview of what they're what they've been doing in their communities, and then actually go over to some questions and answers. So please chime in on the chat box if you are kind of doing something similar, or if you want to ask a question about how they did that, so that we can really make this kind of a very interactive dialogue, and so they can hear from all of you. So we're going to start with Delia Smith, who's the Community Economic Support Director with the Oneida Tribal TANF and Native Employment Works program, and then I'll move on to the next speaker and introduce them. So Delia, can you go ahead and get us started?
Sure. Good morning. My name is Delia Smith, and I'm the Economic Support Director for the Oneida Nation Tribal TANF and NEW program. And what we did early on, the nation had, once COVID started, the nation had lost quite a few employees initially due to the casino shutting down for some time. So we had a community that was, I would say, kind of in a situation where employment was unknown. So what we did is we had I oversee the WIOA program, TANF, and NEW programs. And so I asked the team, along with our intake coordinator, to create some programming so that we could use our social media to assist the people that are in the community. So the team began gathering and continue to gather to create those programmings and using Facebook and social media as a way to connect with our clientele, because we are still closed to the public with people coming in. So one of the things that happened within our local county is that they did a job fair. So we kind of piggybacked on that same idea, using those same ideas, but using it here locally within the reservation. So WIOA staff worked with TANF and NEW to kind of gather that same information, and then created a flyer and information. Those 3 programs created a self-help guide as far as what services each program offered, who to contact. So that was on our very front page of that packet that was given out. So what the team did was sat outside, and they handed out those packets in a, we happened to have some promo gifts available. I think we had some shoulder bags. And so we put all the information inside, and the staff were able to be masked outside and hand those out and announce it. The team went on Facebook Live to let everybody know that they were here. And so that was a drive-by job fair, and they had about a stack of 80 employers of information who to contact within that packet that was given out. And at that time, I believe the team had given out about 70 packets, 75 packets to the community that were that came through. So there was an actual pretty decent turnout for early on in COVID. That was October of last year. And then we did hear a lot of positive feedback from the community. So we are looking at ways to improve that process. Some of the things that we've done so far, the team has done so far, is we ordered thumb drives to download templates for a resume, a cover letter, and some of the links to the search engines for employers locally, so that they could use that. And so that's been a easier and faster way for the same teams to get that information out to their clientele. Oh.
We can't hear you, Louisa.
Yep. We're going to come back and ask Delia a few more questions. We're going to quickly jump to George Gaglai, who's the Human Services Director with the Minnesota Chippewa tribe, and he has some unique things to tell you about the service area and what they've been doing.
Good morning, everyone. My name is George Gaglai Jr., and I am the Human Services Director for the Minnesota Chippewa Tribe. It is the consortium of 6 tribal nations located in Minnesota, geographically spread apart in the northern, basically from the northern half all the way up to the border of the Canadian border along the shores of Lake Superior, and then near the Canadian border with one of the tribes, and over towards the border of North Dakota with one of the other tribal nations. So geographically, we're pretty well spread out, but we do comprise the Minnesota Chippewa tribe. About 40,000 members are part of that, and each tribal nation has their own governing body, even though the Minnesota Chippewa tribe is recognized as by the federal government. So anyway, we have under our guidance here, the new program. I got to turn my computer down. All of a sudden the alerts start popping. You know, you never notice how that happens when you start doing something. Everything starts to ping and ding and whatever. And so what happened here, this pandemic hit us back in March. And we were immediately impacted by it because our partners at the state level, because we do so much work directly with them, Minnesota Department of Human Services, Department of Economic Development, the county agencies had all been directed to shut down or shelter in place, as we say, for a period of time, but that ended up lasting quite a while. Most of our partners at the state level have been on a sort of work from home telecommuting since then. So there's been a lot of communication via this method right here, which is something that we had not used a lot of in the past, but I tell you what, it's been a great piece and a great tool to utilize today, because with our geographic location, and then the Minnesota Chippewa tribe has like 19 county service area, primarily in the northern half and eastern portion of the state. We have offices also located in Duluth, Minnesota, in the southern part of St. Louis County, which probably is our largest county, but it also has the largest number of participants. And then we also have an office in northern St. Louis County, which is in Virginia. This has always created quite a challenge for us because of distance, and then the communities that we serve around those communities. Most people have to travel about anywhere from 50 to 60 miles, and then our one of our staff in Duluth, he travels all the way up to Grand Portage to meet the needs there. So that's another three-hour drive from Duluth all the way up on the North Shore. Beautiful drive. I know he must enjoy that time. I certainly would, but that's kind of the dilemma that we had even prior to the pandemic. When the pandemic hit, certain restrictions were lifted by the state, which most of our clients or participants have are receiving economic support through MFIB, or some of the other programs as well. So we had seen a quick decline in clients or participants engaging with our employment specialists or job counselors. That drop off, I would say, was about 50%, and it's kind of still that way today. We haven't had any contact with many of them because they haven't been required to do that, and which basically says, okay, if I don't have to make any contact with you, then I don't have to report, I don't have to do anything. And that's basically what the state of Minnesota did. They just dropped every requirement for reporting for individuals so that they don't have to meet the criteria to be qualified for cash grants, SNAP benefits, and whatnot. So all those things were really challenges for us because we wanted to maintain contact with them because we provide employment services to a lot of those people. Our workforce, our people in the workforce declined. We probably lost about 90% of the people that were in employment. The casino shut down, other employment opportunities. They did the same thing because of the lack of business. One thing that did continue and was really positive for us was people in education that went to distance learning, and I think distance learning has been going on for quite some time. So that was a relatively easy transition for the education people or the schools, especially college level people. It didn't impact us that much, but it did allow for us to take a breath because now we didn't see a need for people to get back and forth to school or to work. We found different, or they found different means or different areas of needs at that time. Came down to the need for internet, need for Wi-Fi access. And so these are the types of things that we had encountered. And in our area, the tribal nations infrastructures are not generally set up to accommodate, a broadband like some tribes have broadband. But with these communities being so remote, it was really challenging to get, to get that communication process going. So, and that's what I'll kind of finish on is that communication process. We started writing a lot of letters informing participants of what our intentions were, that we were now closed, that, if they needed to contact us, they should do so in the form of, emails regularly. Our staff, they were deemed non-essential employees, so they were basically not quite furloughed. They still stayed connected to the office here through their own phones, and everybody's phones were transferred to their personal cell or their work cell phone. So they did answer the calls and they did answer clients' needs during that period of time. But during that time, there was no contact. It went on for well, it's still going on. We still haven't really lifted that. But some other things that had developed as a result of that is we saw a need to partner with other agencies. And so those are the things that started happening in this calendar year. Opportunities to create employment opportunities for participants who had been hard to place in the past. We're looking at some ideas as how we can improve in those areas too. So we've had a lot going on, a lot of challenges in this period of time. But I commended my staff yesterday because we meet weekly on Zoom and we staff cases and we continue to provide the necessary support for people who are participating in our program. So miigwech for the opportunity to participate today.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, George. And we're going to come back and circle up and ask you some additional questions. But I'm going to quickly jump to our next pair of speakers. They're from Menominee Indian Tribe of Wisconsin, Ashley Wafakane, who's the recruitment and training coordinator, and Jamie Awanape, who's the TANF case manager. And they have a unique thing that they started doing during COVID and that they've partnered with and really expanded it across 2 programs. So we're going to start with Ashley and then we're going to jump to Jamie. And Ashley, you are on mute.
Hi. So I run the youth work experience. I run the youth work experience program. And normally we have about 100 youth workers ages from 14 to 24, and we go and place them at work sites. That's typically what we would do before this pandemic. So because of last summer, we tried to do something else by creating them packets. It's a 5-week program, and I came up with topics that were tackling the tough skills, learning how to sell yourself. And that's typically like with resumes, building your brand, looking into their future, their career future, and how far will your paycheck take you, and what would you do if you knew you couldn't fail. So these packets were, each packet was about up to 20 pages long, and they had all week to do each packet for the 5 weeks. And so at the end, they would be given a $500 stipend, determining on how much work that they did in each packet. So in each packet, we would do a training, a live training on Facebook. So we would do it on, I would create a group through our Facebook work experience program. And from there, I would do a live training where kids can jump on at a certain time and ask their questions as we go along, if they have any questions with anything. Yeah.
And then
that sums up the program for that.
And then Jamie, can you talk about how you've moved that onto the TANF side of the house? And you are on mute, Jamie.
Also, everyone, yes, on the TANF aspect of that, we piggybacked onto what Ashley already created. For the pandemic, time-wise, for the month of March through August, we created a basic flyer of what we could do with helping our families at home, because a lot of them had children at home that were no longer in school. Families, some of them were laid or kept required to stay home. So we were creative with what we could do at home. We created a flyer for cultural activities and educational activities, job training activities, family creative activities. We were very creative with what the families could do at home during that time. Starting after August through December, our school district tried to start a hybrid schedule. that didn't pan out. So a lot of the families were having internet connection issues, which started from day one during this pandemic. Some families did not have that. Some had very little. Some were lucky to have full connection. So with that, going from Ashley's packets, I thought, well, let's get a packet and let's revise it for TANF frame of mind for families. And we recreated packets 1, 2, and 3 as far as we're at right now. What we did is we had the families pick these packets up when they picked up their benefit. And even with that, we were creative with that. They did a drive up at our building. We would just keep an eye on who was coming through. They didn't get out of the car. We met them outside with our masks and our precautions. So we had it all in a packet, gave it to them. They had instructions. On top of the packets, we also included creativity projects throughout the month. We had a beaded lanyard, a dream catcher, and most recently a recipe box. And each activity with the lanyard specifically, we had a tutorial that we added to our community resource center page. Different from the youth program, we did not create a specific youth or a TANF page just because of the lines of confidentiality. All we encouraged our families to do was to like our community resource page, and we added whatever on there. We did not specifically go towards TANF. So if a community member was interested, I'm sure we would have helped them out. And we also included, or one of the things I also wanted to mention during this whole time, we had to open up all forms of communication. That included a doorstep drop-off. We always did mail. We improved on our emails, phone contact, phone reviews, Facebook Messenger, texting. Families learned how to also broaden their ways. They've learned to take pictures and send me their projects. They've learned to ask a question, text me the question. So their ways of communication also improved during this time. All the projects we gave, like I said earlier, was given to the families on their check pickup day, which is approximately the 10th of the month. And they were all due back to our office by picture, by drop off, by sharing with me over the phone, by email. It was due the last Friday of the month. So that gave the families approximately 2.5 weeks to 3 weeks to complete the projects. That's including the packets and the creativity project. I do want to add that they were all self-paced and were at home. So that helped the families manage their homeschooling and their household management. That was one feedback that I got highly recommended from the families. About 3/4 of my caseload did engage into these activities. And I do want to give a high 5 to, we had 4 families complete all the projects as of February 1st. So this was as of from October through February 1st, everything was created by 4 of our families. The families enjoyed the creative projects that we gave. They're looking for more. They saw these as a sense of calming or a de-stressor to them during this time. And a lot of the stuff, I want to look forward to engaging and keeping this going. Even though we are slowly starting to have limited classes here within our building, with the precautions in place. But I would like to include these also maybe for future families for obstacles they may be facing right now, such as childcare, transportation. Hey, let's give you the packets and you can do them at home. Let's get you the activities and have you do something at home versus having to come into the office and getting other barriers down, I guess. But other than that, that's the basic gist of what we did on the TANF aspect.
That's wonderful. And I'm going to come back and ask a few more questions about that. We're going to put up a quick poll question, and some of our presenters talked about how they kind of ventured into some more of the social media aspect built on some of what they already had. So I've just got kind of a fun question here for all of you. You know, how do you see using social media in your program communications, just to kind of see what everyone out there is kind of doing right now or interested in doing. Just gonna let this run for a second. Okay. All right, great. So it looks like a lot of people were already using social media pre-COVID and plan on continuing doing so. And then some people have added it. Looks like that is a good percentage as well. And then it still looks like a good percentage, close to 27–30% of you have not added it as part of your program communications, but you are interested in doing so in the future. So, so there's a question, Jamie and Ashley, about the packets and in terms of kind of maybe thinking about sharing kind of an example of a packet or kind of your model. Do you have kind of thoughts about where you got that from and how you could share that with your colleagues here? And you're on mute, Jamie. Okay, Ashley.
Okay, I will start off with the last week packet that we've done. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, you're fine.
Okay, so for an example, the learning points for this packet is identifying my goal, making my step journey to get there, who is my support group, types of obstacles I may run into, and how to plan for them. What will keep me motivated? So this helped out a whole lot with the kids when they were doing this because it helped them break down all of their steps. They got to brainstorm any of their goals that they want, and after that, they also had to put them in order to see what they need to do to get to the next step and the next step and so forth. I gave examples for everything so they had an idea just in case they forgot. A lot of this stuff, I had visions of what I wanted them to think about, and then I just Googled ideas on actually how to put it on paper and like what I want it to look like. And then they also had to figure out who their supporters are, who's going to help them get to where they want to be, and if they have any barriers on there, what are they going to do to get past that barrier? I did a survey at the end, and a lot of people liked the budgeting one and the goals.
That's great. And so Ashley and Jamie, I think, so I saw a comment from Sue on there as well, that I think what we'll try to do is we'll get an example from the youth and adult packet sent here, and we can try to upload it right here in the message box. Sue, if you could perhaps send that to me, and then I can, I can upload that to the as a file here, and we can also post it on the registration page so people can see those examples. So that would be great.
Email that to you.
Okay, that's great, Ashley. I know, so people are interested in that and the packet. So I kind of wanted to take a step back and ask all of you on the panel, and then also everyone listening, were your staff and you ready to work remotely? And if not, what did you do to get everyone on board? And that's for everyone.
This is Delia. I guess as a team, we never really worked remotely. We've always been in our offices ever since COVID started, but it was a very new way to reach out to our clientele. And at first it was a little bit harder to try to figure out just internally. We were trying to figure out what to do here. And then, look at our TANF programs specifically because we needed more contact with them, obviously. But it was a quick turnaround, working with our maintenance people, we have mailboxes outside for pickup and drop off, making those phone calls. If we were working from home, learning I had to get some things together for our IT staff so people could forward their phone calls and have the certain connectivity at home from our service, from our server to at home. So it was a lot of quick work for everybody, or for me right away, for everybody to have that in the event they do have to work from home. But because of the team and their work, it's really hard for them to work from home. But again, making that contact with everyone. Facebook seems to be, at this point, a really good way for us to reach out to our clientele. And then our TANF caseworkers, making sure they continue to meet with their clients to maintain their work participation rates. But yeah, at first it was pretty crazy, but I think now we are all more familiar with it, and we use our website more and we use Facebook more.
Sounds great. And it looks like some of the chat box some people were ready, some people were not, and it looked like sometimes the IT needs were the kind of the maybe either the helping aid right away or the kind of barrier waiting for things to kind of get there. George, how was it with your 19 county area? Were y'all ready to hit the ground running, or did it take you a while?
No, it took us some time. I think knowing what was coming, that, I think many were prepared for this pandemic to some extent, right? We knew that there was going to be some changes, so we started preparing right around March and letting our participants know that we probably were not going to be maintaining office hours any longer. And what they did was they put together a plan, and I don't always advise this for them, is using their cell phones, their work cell phones, to have their calls transferred to them, because then they risk taking calls after hours and on weekends. And that's kind of what happened with my staff. Provided there's very little we can do after 5 o'clock every day, and not on the weekends. But we know that crisis, it's not limited to 8 to 5. It happens at any time, and so that was one of the things that we did. Our infrastructure here at Minnesota Chippewa Tribe is not quite set up to take to address some of those concerns that we had right off the bat. So we had to go and do things, I guess, sort of in a primitive in nature compared to modern times. Mail, U.S. mail, drop boxes outside of our building, regular telephone contact. These are all things that we had implemented prior to the issuing of the pandemic, or from CDC or the World Health Organization. Then of course Minnesota kind of followed suit, and so because our partners are the state of Minnesota, we just kind of follow what they did. And when they implemented their process, we just kind of adopted that. And so again, we're kind of where we are now, but I think we have adopted well. I think implementing the use of whatever technology that we can access, which is basically the phone system. We don't use Facebook. We never did. I think our leadership here has been against Facebook only because there's this thing called tribal politics, and it's always an issue. And we don't want the message going out there that we are opening up this for a specific purpose, because then there's always somebody who's going to say, well, yeah, why don't you have one for this or that? So we've been really shied away from that. But in other words, I think we've adjusted well. But like I said, when we had that decline from 190 participants down to about 80 that we've maintained contact with, we didn't really have to do a lot of extra work. It kind of, the state decided how that was going to work. And so we had a meeting with them via Zoom last Friday, and how we are going to reintegrate those processes that they had basically not required participants to be compliant with. And so that is another discussion that is going to take some time, because we don't see that happening anytime before June. We see a potential rollout of that process probably from June to September. And even the state, they've come forward and says that we've developed this this app that participants can use on their phone. And while fine and dandy for the state, we see some challenges when it comes down to usage amongst our relatives and our participants on, in the communities that they reside in. So
trying to find that sweet spot in between new technologies and new things versus kind of ways of meeting where people are kind of at. Jamie, were y'all ready?
We weren't ready at first. A lot of us, we use our personal phones, our personal laptops. Thank goodness to IT with walking us through with being able to get into our email and do basic things like that. But after a while, we were able to get laptops purchased for the caseworkers, and we're able to now, we also have a phone system created so that if anything comes through, it obviously goes through our main line to our cell phones or our laptops. And now if we want to make a phone call out with our personal phones, it'll come up under our work phone number. But to touch base on George's comment about the after hours phone calls, I was worried about that also, but I laid the ground right away. Hey, please call me during work hours. If something comes up, feel free to share. I try to keep that open as much as possible, but there is that fine line on, where's personal time and where's work time, and what can I do in my personal time. That was understandable, but not at first. But now we're engaged pretty well with what we have, thanks to IT.
And I know Jamie and Ashley, you both mentioned maybe putting your phones on silent because some of your clients tend to work on their packets and send you stuff at oddball hours. So,
so with my youth group that we've had, their form of contacting me was through Messenger, and I tried to redirect them to make sure that they go through our youth group Messenger rather than my personal Facebook Messenger. That way I could keep track of all of the conversations that we've had. And like I said, we have like about 95 youth workers. And so I was up for, if you need to ask a question about a packet, I'd rather them ask at any time. And that way I can try to answer them as we go along. And their questions happen to come up a lot towards anywhere between 11 at night up until like 4 o'clock in the morning. But I'm just glad that they were working on there. That's typically their hours, is that when they start working on their packets, it's in the middle of the night, and then they sleep during the day. So I was happy that I was able to be available for that, because once I hear my phone ding, I'm like, oh, somebody's asking a question. I'd get right up and I'd answer them. And then sometimes they would be back and forth like, oh, okay, thank you so much for answering. So that was pretty rewarding that I was able to be there for them.
That's great. That's great. I'm going to shift hats a little bit, and Adelia, I'm going to ask you a specific question. I'm going to drop something else in the chat box, and it's around kind of the engaging employers. And you took that unique way of engaging employers, that drive-through job fair. Can you talk about how you did it?
It really kind of stemmed off our WIOA staff. He was engaged in a county job fair, so he already had a stack that that those employers were shared. So what I asked him to do is contact those employers to make sure that we could still utilize their information to share it with our job fair. So again, for him, it was a matter of kind of reaching out to people and building that connection in just his name. And he got more information from that. So I think it was just a matter of touching base. We haven't had any placements as of yet, but we're hoping to create some more opportunities in the future. And then our summer youth will be starting up this year. So our TANF summer youth will be starting their placements. So one step at a time.
And then George, you had mentioned some things that are kind of happening kind of as we talk in the last month or two about how you're working with employers kind of across the state to kind of look at how they understand and work with Indigenous clients. Can you talk a little bit more about what you're doing there?
Well, yeah, and I think that's one of those things that just kind of was came about as a result of knowing that there's a lack of Native American people, employed in certain areas from central Minnesota. And again, we look at some of these communities, and they're all predominantly, white, non-Native. So seeing people of color, and then of course Indigenous people employed there, there's not a lot of that that's visible. So we started talking with Region 5, which is the central portion of Minnesota and then northward. And they asked me what we probably saw as some of the barriers. And what I explained to them is that this is one of the things in Minnesota is that non-Native people, whites, they have a lack of understanding of the Indigenous people. There are challenges that have been created from historical issues. There's systemic racism. These are all factors that they're there. You can't deny them. And so when we look in these communities, those concerns do arise. And that's why people are reluctant to want to find employment in the Brainerd area or the Bemidji area because the overt, discrimination is just, it's there and it exists. So one of the things that we talked about is how can we break that barrier down? And I think we can do that by, educating employers and just some of the basics, say, Indigenous American 101. Talk about some of the challenge that these individuals might face in going to fill out an application even, or to facing an interview. These are things that many people don't have any experience in doing. I heard somebody mention earlier about tribal gaming. It's unfortunate, that is our only economic engine here for the Leech Lake tribe, which is one of the Minnesota Chippewa tribal members. And so a lot of young people are steered in that direction. They don't leave the area, because, there's the lack of job skills, or even the lack of confidence, to maybe go work some. There are some, don't get me wrong, there are plenty, but I think the opportunity for the majority just isn't there here. And so to look for work off the reservation is a challenge, because right away they face that. And so our idea with this Community Workforce Inclusion Council was to start to educate employers about the Indigenous peoples that are here in this area. give them a little history lesson about, how long they have been here and how they are part of the culture, and they're part of the history of this state. And they could be an extremely valuable piece, to their organization, or a valuable part of their organization, and as their workforce. So we're just kind of dancing around some of the topics about that right now. But, this isn't just limited to the Indigenous and American people, but it's also, some of the immigrants that have come here in the, the last 20 to 30 years. But, our focus is how can we get more of our Indigenous people into the workforce in these communities that are served, that we provide, that are in our service area, but also have a tribal nation located near them. That is a challenge, a great challenge for us.
Louisa, are you still there? I think she might be frozen.
Louisa? Yeah, her screen is frozen.
Okay, well, this is LaMonica. I think Louisa will probably need to sign back in, and we'll just keep moving forward. So I know that we'll be getting into sort of discussions further about access to computers, tablets, internet, and so on and so forth. So for the audience that have been sort of hearing this sort of as a theme or seeing some of that in the chat, please know that there will be a session on bridging the digital divide where we will explore more of what tribes have been able to do in that regard. I wanted to ask a follow-up question. I know we've, Delia, you talked quite a bit. Oh, Louisa's back.
Oh, that's okay. LaMonica, go ahead.
So Delia, you talked quite a bit about the job fairs and the packets and all that you guys have done, as well as Ashley and Amy. And so I'm sure that there have been a lot of things that you've learned through that process. So as you continue to move forward and think about how you will implement some of those strategies and ideas in the future, what advice or lessons learned have you sort of thought about that you would incorporate back into your program, or that you would share with those who are listening?
I think for us, is just try it to see if it works. I think last week I did a Facebook Live from our Facebook page to the community, and we thought there'd be nobody coming. I just wanted to give some updates about what we're doing, and it was a really good turnout. There was we had over 60 viewers that had really amazing questions for all of us. I think just to try it, go with your ideas and work with it. Again, this is going to be our new normal for a while. So just trying to think of different ways. And I think that sparked a lot of, even within our team, people had different ideas on how they can use that live to reach out to their different customer base. So I think my advice would be just to try it, see if it works. And if it doesn't work, kind of take from it and use those ideas that did work. So that would be the one thing I would just say, is just give it a try, and you never know.
I would like to add that with the TANF families that we have here, it helped me to help them see themselves, what they can do. With the packets and the assessments that we shared with them throughout the last couple of months, they alone identified their own strengths and their weaknesses. When I'd asked for their feedback, they said, hey, this is what I seen. This is what I need to work on, or, and it helped me to help them see, this is what we're gonna work on. This is your best quality. This is where we can improve. And then themselves, they said how much the packets and the creativity projects that we included, they included into their own schedule. So like you and I, we have children that were in school. We had to balance school. We had to balance employment. We had to balance our household, our pets. They were able to realize within their daily schedule that, hey, I can get this done. It may be at a different time than you and I, but they got it in their schedule. They were able to do what they wanted to do that day. And that's kind of one of the things I want to improve with in the future, is to take these packets and continue them, pandemic or not. Let's keep doing this so that we can help them see themselves, if that clarifies.
And one of the, and LaMonica, I was going to ask a similar question when my technology cut out on me. I was going to build off of our keynote speaker, Jennifer Ratcliffe, and thinking about that re-envisioning and what do you want to kind of keep, and what do you want to take the opportunity to go, okay, that was or wasn't working. How can I kind of re-envision the program and make this a opportunity versus, kind of a barrier to the program? What would all of you, what do you think in terms of re-envisioning your programs with what you're doing now and how you see it moving forward in the future? Maybe, Delia, do you want to start?
Okay. I think one of the things that our TANF program did, some of the case managers kind of went out and found different videos for their clients to watch and to be active in and kind of report back on. So that was one of the things that was really new for them. And then just kind of reporting back to their caseworkers on some of the virtual learning updates that they were going through. So I think even the case managers who aren't as familiar with social media or even internet, it really created them to be creative and, asking or kind of providing a curriculum for people to do at home because of COVID. So I think that, being part of their regular, I guess, kind of a tool for each caseworker to say, okay, well, maybe they have limitations, they can watch videos or, and then one of the things that I know one of our caseworkers did was asked her clients to actually go look at our videos on our Facebook and report on them so that, they were actually having them utilize the tools that we were using. So I think it was really important for our team to kind of be creative that way with different activities, and it pushed us all to be more creative and think outside of the box. So I think I appreciate what has happened, but I think again it has really made us think of different things, and I appreciate what Menominee has to share, because I did share with them that this would be a really good opportunity for us to even think deeper about what we could be doing with COVID. So thank you.
Mayor Ashley, what do you kind of think in terms of building on that moving forward? What would you like to keep or maybe or re-envision?
Changes, I think we did a really good job by creating our curriculum for the program as fast as we did, because typically I will start around January or February with the program, with our youth program, and figuring out where our placements are going to be and what our trainings are going to be, and the application process. All that takes time. And then it wasn't up until maybe like a month right before we were about to start is when they said, oh yeah, let's just go ahead and do the program. And I'm like, oh my gosh, yeah, I'm for it. I want something exciting to do. And then at the same time as we were getting everything done, I had to quickly try to create all of the packets as fast as I could as the program is going on. So I had my topics and everything, but the packets weren't done because everything was such a delay. So this year, my plan is I already have all the materials that I want to use for this summer, and we are going to do it the same way as we did last summer. I know even with the youth, their suggestions where they want their packets back after they're graded, because I kept the packets until the end and they got all of their packets when they got their check. And even the youth wanted me to stick with the deadline. As lenient as I tried to be throughout the program, is letting people know, okay, even though it's due on Friday, I still want the packets in. I'm missing 20 packets. I'm missing, 25 packets, whatever. At the end, the kids said, when the packets are due, that's the deadline. Hold us accountable for that. Everybody else, if they didn't get their packets, then oh well. I'm like, okay, you guys said it. So that's part of the suggestions that I wanted to make sure that I do for this summer.
Thinking ahead and thinking of how to be reactive. Jamie, do you want to add anything to that in terms of now that you started this process for TANF in October, November, what are your thoughts for the rest of 2021 and moving into 2022?
Well, first off, with the packs that were created, like I said earlier, I piggybacked off of Ashley's program. Ashley did a great job with working with the youth in the community, and all we did was tweak it for families, tweak it for young adults. I personally would like to continue this and keep going. She has a total of 10 packets, I believe, and we're only on packet number 3. So we're going to continue this on throughout the year, keep this going. Currently, right now, we're at a standpoint of budgeting. We had a good flexibility of the caseload, want to continue more or had problems with the budgeting packets. So what we did is we created a worksheet from her budgeting packet. So I guess you want to say it's kind of a work in process too, but definitely, I want to continue this, keep it going. Like I said, one of the biggest positives I've seen is the families themselves. They're identifying themselves, whatever they see at home and what they're working on. And when I ask at our phone reviews, like usually a week and a half after they receive the first packet or their packet for that month, I'll ask how it's going. Or I'll hear about it after the deadline is done. They'll give me their opinions on what they thought was awesome, what they thought worked well. And they'll definitely tell me, hey, I need to work on this. So I think it's a very good self-working tool for the families themselves. And we're going to continue this. Yeah.
And George, what are your thoughts for kind of where y'all have come over the last year and where you think you want to kind of continue to move forward and re-envisioning the program and taking some of the stuff and taking the opportunity to kind of rethink?
Well, I think what's going to happen here is with our meetings with the state are starting last Friday, and then we've been involved with some ESNet meetings with them as well. We're kind of talking about some best practices to use here in Minnesota. Because we are not completely, we're not TANF designated yet. We are solely, working with the Native Employment Works program. So that limits what we have the ability to do. But we're talking about how we can transition to becoming, TANF designated, like Menominee, like some of the other tribes in there. I think Red Lake is one that is much like Menominee as well. That would allow us, a little bit more involvement or increase the involvement on our part. So those are discussions that we are beginning to have with the state of Minnesota, but we also realize that we're going to have to include ACF in that process too. So that's something that we think about, that we have a vision for, but it all hinges really on when the state of Minnesota will start loosening up, or actually, let me reverse that. When they will implement those requirements for compliance again, so that then we will we'll have a better idea of how we will move forward. Our communication process is probably going to stay very similar to what we were doing prior to COVID. We know that once the state sends out that notice to participants, we're going to see this influx of people come back. And so we're preparing for that first. How is that going to be on our current, our job counselors, our employment specialists? Because I think we're all sitting at about anywhere from 30 to 40 participants per counselor. And that's a lot. We realize that we probably are going to walk into something real challenging here, but until we know, and then like I said earlier, the state is not going to just drop it on us. They're going to phase this in. So they'll probably notify us what they're going to do by June. And then by September, they'll probably lift some of these compliance concerns that all the tribes have talked about. I think our meeting on Friday, Red Lake shared the same concern, as did White Earth, Leech Lake, the tribes that are involved in this whole process. We all have our thoughts about how to move forward and how to implement a best practice from here on, because even prior to COVID, the state lacked an understanding in how we would operate. So we got to share some things with them last week, and hopefully we see some improvement. We see a better approach to dealing with people that we provide services to. Thank you.
Thank you. In terms of, so I was just trying to follow along in the chat box too. I know, so I think Jamie and Ashley, or Jamie, I'm not sure if Ashley just stepped away for a second. I guess in terms of some more about what's in the packets and how that kind of works, can you talk a little bit about, at least for the three packets that you've done, can you talk a little bit about what's in them? And I just got the email packet, so I'm going to try to share with everyone right now as you're talking, Jamie.
Okay, so the three packets, adapted packets, I should say, from the youth program. Packet number 1 included identifying self-attitude and how you could manage your self-attitude within the workplace. It included examples like scenarios of what you would do if, or examples that way. Strengths and weaknesses, it identified their own strengths and weaknesses of being employed, employability, responsibility. Packet number 2 included preparing for the workplace. That included the resume and interview practicing. And then packet number 3 was budgeting. I believe it was the 50, I should know this, the 50-30-20 rule. So it helped identify in that realm their needs, their wants, and their savings. And right after the budgeting packet, that is where we're kind of at right now. It helps identify bad habits and how we can improve those to, in the long run, maybe doing saving. But as of right now, we added a worksheet to that. So currently this month, everybody's given a needs and wants, and then to identify how much their monthly need or their monthly want is for that month. And from that, once we get that turned in next week, what we're going to do is create a specific budget per family before we move on to the next packet for the TANF side of it anyway. But I see Ashley's back in, so maybe she can identify the subjects for the youth.
And Jamie, you had mentioned that the budgeting really went over really well with your TANF participants. And can you talk a little bit more about what you kind of honed in on there for them, or what they were finding that was so beneficial to them at this time?
Well, after explaining what the 50-30-20 rule was, they read a section on that and they understood that. And then we were giving them an example. We gave them an example, $1,000. Describe what your expenses are in one example of an activity. And then we went to their own specific. So it kind of gave us a good light into what they need. And I love the honesty from the families, because they also included what their wants are. $3 in scratch offs. Great, let's add that in there, you know. So they're including everything that, and they had a question at the end is, how did you feel about spending your money? Now they had pretend $1,000. Some, like I said, I love the honesty. They said, I'm not happy, pretty sad, LOL, you know. So they would add their thoughts to it. And some thought it was pretty good. Hey, thanks for letting me think about this. And then we also went into another scenario of, let's see, another scenario of $1,000. And then it went into the other methods, the checkbook method, the notebook method, the envelope method. So there's a good variety of ways that they could see, how do I budget? And I think in an honesty, after getting the feedback from that packet, that might be where the confusion is, because I don't want to say it's confusion. It's, hold on a minute, they ask questions at the end. I had a little bit of a tough time. This took me a little bit longer to complete. So just taking that feedback, I just went back to basics. We took a step back. So now they just have one worksheet. Okay, you take your budget and you tell me what's in your needs and wants, and what do you want to save for? So I'm excited to see their worksheet to come back. So it went from a packet, let me see, this packet alone was 12 pages of information and scenarios, including the quiz, to one sheet. So now they're just down to one sheet today to take the next step and see what they've learned from this and how they can incorporate in their own life, I guess, if that helps answer your question.
No, that does. That's great. Yeah, because I know that everyone wants to kind of really have a better understanding of what to do with their finances and trying to do that. So that's great that you were able to kind of meet them where they kind of needed to be. I want to, we have about 7 minutes left, and I want to kind of ask a general question, because it sounds like all of you used a lot of different methods of communication, either ones that you were already using, either ones that you had to kind of build out. And what would you say kind of your lessons learned in terms of communicating to everyone, and things to kind of think about kind of moving forward? You know, some people don't like social media. How do you come up with a communication plan that incorporates everyone on where they're comfortable with and technology, but yet still gets you and your staff where you need to be? And maybe let's start with George, if you can kind of start with that.
Well, I think what's really important here is that, you know, over time, our participants, they did reach out back to our job counselors or my staff. In order for them to receive an incentive or a support, we required them to, you know, complete some forms for us and update addresses because there's a lot of transient activity that goes on because we are so close. You know, people will go from Nett Lake or Bois Forte down to Fond du Lac, or from Fond du Lac over to Leech Lake to White. So there's a lot of moving going around. So when we do see them, you know, we require that they update information for us, give us current address, contact information, and they would say, well, you know, why do you need this stuff? And I said, you know, and we would explain to them, it's because you know, you need to make, you know, you need to maintain contact with us. Plus we need to know where you are just in the event. I mean, right now, you know, we're not allowed to close any cases for anything, any reason, but we do need to communicate with them. And so remind them that as soon as, you know, the COVID restrictions are lifted, that you will need to report back. You will need to maintain compliance, and you know that would really be helpful, because you don't want to receive a notice of intent to sanction from us, because you know that's one of the things that we really we hate to do to anybody, but when there's no communication, that's the one tool that we've always had. So, and that always, you know, forces a client or a participant to reach out to us, especially when they need something, even if it's a gas voucher to get from, you know, to school, or to get to, you know, where maybe they've been employed and they just haven't really needed us, because, you know, many of those people who were unemployed that lost their jobs have been, you know, benefited by the increase in unemployment benefits. So they were almost, it was better to stay on unemployment than to go back to work, you know. And so there's all kinds of things that went on as a result of that. But, you know, overall communicating, whether it be by mail, email, phone, all these things were really important to us. And, you know, we'll continue to do those things. And like I said, when we need updates, you know, we'll eventually get to them. And we know that by June, we'll probably start hearing a lot more from those that we have not heard from in the last 6 to 9 months. Thank you.
Thank you, George. Ashley and Jamie.
Can you repeat the question again? I'm sorry.
In terms of communicating, there's a variety of strategies that you were using. How are you kind of finding that sweet spot in between people who are very technology friendly, you know, used to that, and how are you kind of managing that with people who really like that in person or snail mail communication?
Okay. Her
Jamie
laptop kept going in and out. And then it died.
Okay.
Hello?
We can hear you, Ashley. Yep.
Okay. So to answer that first part of the question, what we did is we created a box out front for pickup and drop off. So if any of the clients need a hard copy of a timesheet or the packets that we have or a flyer, we can leave it right out front. They can pick it up, and we also have a drop box in our, that goes right to our secretary's office, which is secure, so they can drop it off at any hours of the day, time of night. So that helped, but we also noticed that even just helping them walk through, taking a picture of their timesheet and emailing it to us, that is a learning and process for them. So if we just take a step back and say, okay, let's take a picture, and now you send it to my email. And that alone, they're learning. So I think it's a learning process for all of us.
Yes, it is. Definitely is. And Delia, what would you share in terms of communication and how to kind of meet everyone at the same time that you have to get information out there in different ways?
One of the things that we started like 2 years ago before all this is we had kind of a link on our website that if anyone had any questions or just wanted more information, they could fill out like a fill-in, and it would be directed to our inbox for our intake coordinator. So our intake coordinator kind of will take any calls as far as calls regarding applications or programs. So one of the things we've done too is to make sure that all of our forms are fillable or PDF fillable instead of printing. We've accepted screenshots or pictures of forms. So that's been one thing that's really one of the things that we do a lot. Or we try to teach people, like as we're working on it, one of the things I have encouraged is people to use, we use it for the nation, we're encouraged to use the Teams. So we can share screens and kind of have that conversation. I don't know if anybody has yet, But we all, we kind of give them the option because we have every way to get a form or to send a form by email. We have the drop boxes like Menominee, so people can pick up and drop off. And if we have to, mostly in the nicer times, we would have a picnic table outside, and if clients had questions, we would meet them with a mask on to kind of help them through any documentation if we could. But like I said, our website is up to date, and we try to walk people through any documentation if we can, and taking just different, whatever way they can get it to us. We get a lot of pictures sent to us that we have to make into a PDF or whatever it is. So formatting any documents coming in. So I'll take it as it comes.
Well, thank you all for sharing your stories about, how you've really kind of adapted, made everything, kind of met the pandemic and kind of how you're moving forward. So I just want to take a second to thank Delia, George, Ashley, and Jamie so much for everything that you wanted to share. And if you have more questions, please continue to go ahead and put those in the chat box. I did send or put in the chat box all the different documents. I'll have to work on making sure that if we can put those up on the Bizzaboo site, and I assume that afterwards we'll be able to make these. I'll have to work with Jamie and Ashley on whether or not we can actually make these available on the general OFA PRTA website and or send out to kind of everyone, and so I'll work with everyone from there. But if you have any problems accessing the documents in the chat box, just ping one of us, and we'll make sure that I'll get those out to you in a different format. And again, thank you all for a lovely panel. I'm going to now turn it to Janelle Jones from OFA, who's going to help us transition to the next part of the meeting.
Hello, everyone. Before we head off into break, we will have a poll question that will be posted in the chat. So it's going to be, sorry about that. During the pandemic, what is the top barrier your participants are facing in achieving long-term success? So if you can answer that question before you log off for break, break will be about 45 minutes, and you will have until 11:45 Mountain Standard Time to return.
Okay, I think we'll go ahead and get started. Looks like we have a lot of folks that have joined back from break. My name is Karen Beckerman, and I work with Regions 5 and 7 with the Office of Family Assistance. And I hope that you had a chance at break to grab a snack or have some lunch or check a few emails. And we're glad that you came back to join us this afternoon. This afternoon's topic and session is going to be to continue to explore different flexibilities and ideas, sharing that we can do. And as we look at our programs in moving forward, it's entitled Exploring Flexibilities to Strengthen Programs. And we have 3 speakers today. First, we have Denise Edwards with the branch office of the Division of Tribal TANF Management, who you met this morning with our opening remarks, and she will start us off with a presentation about flexibilities within the federal TANF and new programs. And then next, we're going to hear from a couple of your colleagues who have taken advantage of some of those flexibilities and is going to share some of the things that they did or made available to their families and some of the what steps they took to make those changes. We'll hear from Sandy Kluwer, and who's a division director for the Tribal Child Support Services and TANF program with the Eastern Band of Cherokee Indians. And then we'll also hear from Katie Ciotti, who is the director of the Morongo Tribal TANF program in Minnesota. And so to start us off, after we hear from all the speakers, then we're going to have an opportunity also to have a question and answer session. So please, I think we did a wonderful job of sharing on chat this morning. So please as they're speaking, please maybe jot down your questions or put them into chat, because we'll be looking for those questions where we can ask them in a discussion after we complete with our presentation. So I'm going to turn it over now to Denise to start us off.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Karen. I appreciate that. And thanks to everyone for joining us again to gather some more information. We have enjoyed the fireside chat that was provided by the local tribal perspective, sharing about the flexibilities that others are implementing at their own programs. This presentation will be providing an overall federal oversight about the flexibilities. I personally, as the branch chief for the Division of Tribal TANF Management, I'll be the messenger today sharing the information that we have for all of you. But I want you all to know that this is really a group effort. You have a fantastic team of people that support all of you, mainly the regional program managers. You have the regional program specialists and of course, central office program specialists as well. So you have a large group of support for people that you can turn to when you have questions or any information that you'd like to have. So I'll go ahead and start off. Go ahead and move to the next two slides. Steve, we'll go to slide the program flexibility. Excellent. So I know that a lot of the programs have had lots of questions when it comes to what can we do to be flexible with implementing our tribal TANF or Native Employment Works programs in these challenging times. And what I'd like to do is just provide some information about sort of the flexibilities that we have available in both of the programs. So, you know, we've really had an opportunity today to talk about some of the flexibilities, but I'm going to further describe a little bit about the federal flexibilities that we have available, both with Tribal TANF and Native Employment Works. This includes establishing eligibility criteria, defining work activities, designing supportive services, and establishing program goals and measurements. Tribal TANF programs have the flexibility to include programming that is reasonably calculated to accomplish the four purposes of TANF. And this flexibility provides tribes with the opportunity to adapt and be responsive to changing needs within the community. So one of the things we wanted to make sure is to encourage that we want programs to be responsive and to meet the changing needs and issue guidance via program instructions related to COVID-19. So let's go ahead and move to the next slide, Steve, and I'll cover a little bit about that. Great, thank you. So the first program instruction that OFA issued was written for both states and tribes. And this was done in order to summarize the flexibilities in the TANF program to respond to the COVID-19 pandemic. We're going to take a closer look at the work participation rate and the amendment pieces next. But I want to make sure that everyone understands the preliminary approval for amendments is also applicable to Native Employment Works programs. So I think it's important to emphasize that because both programs have that flexibility with the program instruction that we issued. So the second program instruction was written specifically for tribes and addressed the requirements for providing non-recurring short-term benefits or NRST benefits to those in need as a result of COVID-19. We encourage tribal TANF programs to revisit the detailed guidance related to NRST benefits while developing plans, whether now or sometime in the future. I think it's really important. We want to make sure that tribes feel supported to implement changes that are necessary. And your main point of contact is going to be your regional program offices. They're really in the best position to support all of you. If you have questions about any of these flexibilities, you want to make sure to reach out to them. So the key message that we want to make sure is that there must be a specific crisis to a family, not just a general crisis in the community like the pandemic, since families are not necessarily impacted the same across the board. So as I go through, We're going to hear from Eastern Band of Cherokee Indians on how they use the preliminary approval process to create and implement non-recurring short-term benefits during the pandemic. But I'm going to go ahead and move through and talk a little bit more about some of the flexibilities that we have. Steve, next slide. Great, thank you. So let's talk a little bit about the work participation requirements. One of the things that's probably that we want to emphasize is ACF really has no authority to waive the work participation rate requirement itself. It does have the authority to grant relief from the resulting penalty in the face of a national natural disaster, and other calamities. So one of the things that I want to make sure that tribes understand is that while many TANF programs may be concerned about meeting the work participation rate, OFA is really committed to making sure that we provide any flexibilities that are available so that we can ensure that we provide any sort of authority to maximize the extent of looking at the work participation rate from that perspective. So this is all explained in the program instruction, but again, I'm going to emphasize if you have any specific questions about how this all is going to work with your individual program and work participation rate, you want to make sure to reach out to your regional program managers and the program specialists to make sure that they can support you in any questions that you have. Did we just lose the PowerPoint? I was like, wait a minute. And I think I was ready to move to slide 6, Steve, when you're ready. Excellent. So I wanted to spend a little bit of time talking about the amendment process for preliminary approval from ACF. So normally, amendments are due 30 days prior to the implementation for tribal TANF, and then 45 days prior to implementation for Native Employment Works. We wanted to make sure that we provided some flexibility given the pandemic. We wanted to make sure that we could respond more efficiently to tribes and their needs with their communities and their families. So the amendment process itself, we wanted to make sure to review that. When you seek preliminary approval from ACF, you're going to send an email to your regional point of contact. So your regional program specialist and your regional program manager. We then, ACF provides preliminary approval in a reply email if it's appropriate. And then we will grant retroactive approval of the plan amendment for any changes that are received for preliminary approval. It's a different process than is typical for our Tribal TANF and Native Employment Works amendment process. So I wanted to make sure that we review this with all of you so that you understood. There's lots of tribes that have already had the opportunity to go through this amendment process. We've done our best to expedite this approval because we want to make sure to get that support and those changes implemented in the tribal communities as soon as possible. It's important to make amendments anytime there are substantial changes to the Tribal TANF and Native Employment Works programs. So the Morongo Band of Mission Indians will be sharing an amendment they made ahead of the pandemic that has served them pretty well. For now, let's just walk through 3 work activities and supportive services scenarios as examples to see if the proposed changes warrant an amendment in the Tribal TANF and new programs. So let's see if I apologize, I'm reading some notes, my apologies. If work activities are conducted virtually instead of in person, no plan amendment is needed in either program, whether that's Tribal TANF or Native Employment Works. If the activities themselves did not change, just the place of where those activities are occurring that's not considered a substantial change to the program. So I think it's important for tribes to understand that. The other thing I want to emphasize, and I know I'm going to say this multiple times, but anytime the programs are considering a change, please do not hesitate to reach out to the regional program office, because they're really your point of contact and can provide lots of support about whether you want to or need to submit an amendment, or whether it's just something that you can continue implement as a regular part of your program. So please make sure to do that if you have any questions. So if the work activities themselves change, a plan amendment is required for both tribal TANF and Native employment work. So for example, if the work activities are a key component of the tribal TANF and new programs, they have the flexibility to define the work activities, and that all work activities should be clearly identified within the tribal TANF and new plans. This includes being specific when you're identifying any cultural activities. I know there have been lots of questions about that. If you have implemented or are planning to implement work activities that are not specified in your approved plans, please contact your assigned program specialist, and we'd be happy to have them run over what issues you're looking to change. We'd be happy to support you in that. So if there are any changes to supportive services, tribal TANF programs would need to make an amendment, but Native Employment Works programs would not. This is where the two programs differ. So let me say that again. If there are any changes to supportive services, tribal TANF programs would need to make an amendment, but Native employment programs would not. So the difference here is based on what is delineated in the regulations. That's what really drives the need for an amendment or not. So it's recommended, again, to just consult with the regional office just to make sure that whatever change you're considering is going to be allowed, and they're going to give you the best guidance about whether an amendment is needed or not. Regardless of whatever aspects of your program you're looking to modify to meet the needs of your families and your community, you want to make sure that you are sharing those changes with the regional office so that they can provide you guidance on a case-to-case basis. So we will, and I forgot to mention at the beginning, we're going to provide an opportunity at the end of the presentation if people have questions. So please be sure to write down your questions. We want to make sure to respect the other presenters and give them an opportunity to share the important areas that they are going to be sharing in this presentation. So please hold your questions till the end, but we'll make sure that we're all available to answer them at that time. All right, I think we're ready, Steve. Go ahead and move to the next one. So another flexibility that we wanted to just share some general information about is carryover balances. I think it's important that to talk a little bit about the flexibility that exists and talk about how could programs utilize the funding, what sort of scope or sustainability do you need to consider when you're looking at that. So the carryover balances exist when there's funds from a grant year that go unspent and carry forward into the grant year to be used. So both tribal TANF and new programs are able to utilize carryover funds without fiscal year limitations. Some programs had carryover balances prior to the pandemic, and some programs may be seeing new carryover resulting from decreased caseloads or services during the pandemic. So it's always a good idea for program side to be aware of the financial side of the grant so that you can be all communicating about sort of what the gaps are. If you're uncertain whether or not the program has carryover funds, please work with the financial contacts in your tribe and the regional office to make that determination. But it's one of the areas that there is some flexibility and you can utilize those carryover funds. So, and I neglected to mention previously, and I apologize for that, if you are a 477 program and you have integrated both TANF and new or one of those, It's really important that you work with your BIA AOTR in order to consider any of the amendments or carryover balances that are associated with your 477 program. So make sure to involve them. One of the things that we've done pretty well when we have programs that have integrated into 477 is we work as a team. So we're always open for a conversation with BIA and tribes that have integrated those two programs into their 477 so that we can talk about if there is an amendment that's needed or if there's carryover that's being considered. Those all are basically monitored and facilitated through 477. So your first line of contact is the BIA AOTR, which is their program specialist. So wanted to make sure I emphasize that. So as we continue talking about carryover balances, there's lots of opportunities for programs to innovate when it comes to tribal TANF and Native Employment Works. Even if your program does not currently have any carryover, there's always some flexibility to utilize the funds in a different way. There's lots of flexibility for programs. And we want to make sure that you all feel supported to utilize funds in a different way that better serve the community if that's what's needed. As funding allows, start brainstorming, developing your plans to execute when that capacity exists. And then the resources on this slide would be a great starting point. So I'm not gonna review those resources, but just know that OFA PRTA and then the Pathways to Work evidence is Clearinghouse is also another available resource. Happy to have the regions share more information about that as we move forward. One of the things you want to consider when it comes to carryover balances is when you're developing those plans for innovation, consider whether a pilot or full program implementation would be more ideal. We want you to keep in mind also sustainability. We know that as you start utilizing the carryover balances, there'll be times when you know, that money starts to dwindle down. And so you want to think about, is this an effort that I'm going to be able to continue moving forward when that carryover money is gone? So you want to make sure to give consideration to that as well. And then once the carryover funds are exhausted, how will those services continue? And what does that look like? And how is it that you're going to support those with the current existing budget that you have? And then for significant changes, the regulations do require a plan amendment, and we already talked about that. So if you have any questions, again, we're more than happy to go over that with you. All right, Steve, we're ready for the next slide. Thank you. So as of last week, the American Rescue Plan Act of 2021 has been approved, and it amends Section 403 of the Social Security Act, which created a new $1 billion Pandemic Emergency Assistance Fund to assist needy families impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic. So the eligible entities as outlined in the legislation is states, Washington, D.C., tribes operating a tribal TANF program, and then there's 5 territories that are eligible to receive funds under the Pandemic Emergency Assistance Fund. So the use of these funds are outlined within the legislation. Grantees may use funds only to provide certain non-recurrent short-term benefits, so NRST. For the purposes of the Pandemic Emergency Assistance Fund, NRST benefits means cash payments or other benefits that meet the regulatory definition of 45 CFR 260.31. So that's the section that covers NRST. So, but they are limited to those that fall into the specific expenditure reporting category mentioned within the legislation. So this, for states, they're talking about line 15 of the ACF 196R, which is the state financial reporting form for TANF. And so one of the things we want to emphasize is that for this fund, NRST benefits must be designed to deal with a specific crisis situation or episode of need. And they must not be intended to meet ongoing needs and must not extend beyond 4 months and must only include expenditures such as emergency assistance and diversion payments, Emergency housing is another example. Short-term homelessness assistance, emergency food aid, short-term utilities payments, burial assistance, clothing allowances, and back-to-school payments. We want to make sure tribes understand they may not include tax credits, childcare, transportation or short-term education, and training. Grantees may also use funds for administrative costs. For the state, that's up to a 15% cap. Grantees must use the funds to supplement, not supplant, other federal, state, or tribal funds. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the timeline for expending the funds. It was very, very specific in the legislation. What they are saying is grantees may expend their initial allotments of funds between April 1st, 2021 and September 30th, 2022, which is a very, very short time frame to expend these funds at the end of fiscal year 2022. When that deadline comes up, HHS will reallot any unused funds to other states, territories, and tribes. And then they will have the opportunity to expend those funds within 12 months of receipt. And this is all specified within the legislation. As far as the allotment to states, tribes, and territories, the American Rescue Plan Act of 2021 specifies an allotment formula for the funds. After deducting the $2 million for federal administration of the remainder, there's 92.5% of funds that will be distributed to states and Washington, D.C. based on a two-part formula. So one half is based on child population. The other half is based on prior state expenditures on non-recurring short-term benefits, basic assistance, and emergency assistance authorized solely under prior law. So the part that's important for tribes is there is a 7.5% of funds are set aside for tribal TANF programs in all 5 U.S. territories. And it's going to be distributed in a manner deemed appropriate by the HHS secretary. So our goal is, and remember this legislation is brand new, it's just been out for now 3 or 4 days. We're going to be developing, the Office of Family Assistance is going to have forthcoming guidance. So ACF will be publishing guidance really soon with more information about, first of all, how to request the funds, and then other general policy guidelines. So as we move forward, there'll be lots of opportunities to provide additional information related to this, but that's what I know and that's what I have to share. And I'm hoping that this has been helpful. What I'd like to do next, Steve, is move to the next slide. And we are going to now move to a couple of peer examples where both Sandy and Katie are going to be sharing about their own programs and what they did to implement some flexibilities within their programs. So as I indicated, we'll take some time at the end when they have both finished their presentations. We'll open things up for questions that all of you might have. So thank you again. And Sandy, go ahead and take it away.
Thank you, Denise. I'm Sandy Clure. I'm the Division Director for the Eastern Band of Cherokee in North Carolina for Child Support and TANF. And thank you all for allowing me the opportunity to come and talk about our program. A little bit of history before we start. We started the TANF program here at Eastern Band in 2012. And the program was to serve enrolled members of the Eastern Band and other federally recognized tribes that live on the Qualla boundary in the 5-county service area. We have 5 counties in Western North Carolina that the boundary lies in. So we have a pretty big area. Some of it is easily accessible and some of it is not. So right now we're gearing up to go into our 3rd 3-year plan. And so there's a lot of things that we have talked about and some things that we wanted to try and put in the new plan. And that piece that Denise talked about with program flexibility is going to allow us to do this. One of the things that we find is that we have limited housing on the boundary. And so a lot of our members end up living off the boundary, but in that 5-county service area. So one of the things that we want to look at in the new plan, and because of program flexibility, we will be able to put the piece in there that we can serve enroll members living off of the boundary in that 5-county service area. So that's going to help us to provide more services to more people in our area. And again, program flexibility, as Denise spoke about, that's exactly how we're going to be able to do this in our plan. Let's fast forward a few minutes now and talk about March of 2020 and COVID-19 and how it has affected all of us. For us here at Eastern Band, we closed down around the 17th of March for a period of time to regroup and organize and figure out how best that we could serve our population. We've started getting calls from a lot of our folks asking about, is there any TANF funds that can help us? Because the pandemic has shut down our workplace, and we are seasonal in a lot of our jobs in our area. Some folks have little to none unemployment that they can draw, so they were without any funding at all. Also, when the pandemic hit, daycares closed, so parents that were able to work had no place for their children to go. Schools closed, so parents that normally had children in school while they worked, that was a big area of concern for them as well. We went to virtual schools, and for us in our area, internet is not easily accessible to a lot of folks. So we had all kinds of struggles that we wanted to see how we could help our enroll members with. So we began brainstorming in our program. There was not a piece in our tribal TANF plan for emergency services. And so we talked with our regional rep, kind of told her what we were looking at, told her the concerns that we had, and asked for some assistance about how we possibly could help more individuals. We were very lucky in that we had those carryover balances that Denise talked about again. And so we had some extra funds that we could go ahead and implement an emergency services piece. When we got to thinking about emergency services, how did we want to word that? How could we best write something that would help more of our population? And so we asked the question, should we serve those that are on the boundary that were in our plan? We knew that we were going to have to do that. So unfortunately that left those that did not live on the boundary out. Were we going to go by the 125% federal poverty guidelines that we use for regular TANF, or up to 200% for our diversion services? How much did we want these individuals to receive? We talked about $100, we talked about $500, we talked about several numbers. We just, just trying to figure out how, again, that we could best serve our individuals. And then again, how long should people receive these funds? Back in March when this first happened, I know we all thought in 2 or 3 months we would be out of this, and here we are 12 months later and we're still experiencing it. So we talked about that, talked about, do you refer these folks over to your child support program? Do you require them to, with all of the requirements that we do with regular TANF? So then the Program Information 2020-01 came out, and that really helped us answer a lot of the questions that we had, and it gave us the guidance that we needed in order to put together our emergency services piece. So once we were able to put that together, we were able to go ahead and contact our regional rep. We found out that we could get the preliminary approval. Again, we could do that by email, that we would not have to submit our plan amendment at that time, that would give us some time to get everything together for central office. So we put together our plan. We still required that we have at least one enroll member in the home. one child in the home and that they had to live on the boundary for us. We also were covering a single female who was pregnant in her 3rd trimester. The one thing that we ask is that people provide a proof of layoff or unemployment, and we decided to use the 300% federal poverty guidelines just for this program. Also, these benefits were subject to as funds permit. We didn't know how many people we would have at first. Would we even have enough money to go past 2 months? We didn't know. It's all new. Everything was new when we started out. We finally decided that we would set that time limit to 4 months, and that we would review those cases each and every month to see if the individual circumstances had changed. We did not count stimulus money as income for anybody, and we didn't require the work participation or referrals over to child support, the educational requirements for children and immunizations. We did not require any of that. So then we finally got it together, got an email together, sent it to our regional rep, who then bumped it on up to the central office, and we were given preliminary approval. And that all happened in about 30 days, which is a pretty quick turnaround time when you think about all of the red tape that we normally have to go through. So that piece was wonderful. That language that we have, that preliminary approval, really helped us in that instance. So we were able to start serving folks immediately. Our program falls under Public Health and Human Services here at Eastern Band. We talked about how we're going to get the word out to those folks. Not everybody has internet, not everybody has social media. So how are we going to do that? And our Public Health and Human Services division helped us by putting things out in the local newspaper. We also did social media. We did Facebook for the Public Health Service piece. We have Facebook here. We put it on that as well. Our Public Health Facebook is a little bit broader than we are when it comes to touching folks. They have as many as 25,000 hits in a month. So we knew if we could get the word out and word of mouth that it would help us in order to advertise. We did email blasts on our tribal email because that affects a lot of folks as well, and they can spread the word to their families. So we began going in April, and we thought, by May that we might have a few people. We were very pleased with the number of people we had and the availability of services that we were able to provide for them in the way of cash assistance. We finally decided upon a benefit of $300 per person in that household, and that helped tremendously. Then Eastern Band received the CARES funding, and so they implemented some other programs here. And so we saw a decline in the need for services. But we were able to serve several families here at Eastern Band with this. So one of the advantages of having that emergency services piece, which is now a permanent part of our plan, is that should we have the need again for this, if we have a natural disaster or an act of God, then we're going to have that piece in our plan and we'll be able to readily move into it. We hope that once we get our new plan approved, that it's going to help us expand our service area because of the program flexibility. We're also going to ask for, we raise our federal poverty guideline, and these two changes are really going to help the families of Eastern Band. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sandy and Katie.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for having me here today. My name is Katie Ciotti. I am the TANF director for the Morongo Band of Mission Indians, and we are located in Southern California. We serve two of the largest counties in the nation, and we serve on reservation and but primarily off reservation. So we don't serve many Morongo tribal members, but we do serve any member of a federally recognized tribe that lives off reservation in San Bernardino County. So with that in mind, we knew that we had to be flexible and broad in our determination of emergency assistance and what we would offer for non-recurring short-term benefits. We were serving participants in urban and rural areas, and in an area where natural disasters such as fires and earthquakes, flooding is common. So we were very lucky in the timing of our amendment. So we saw that fires were happening in our area and that we needed to be able to offer non-recurring short-term benefits and emergency assistance. And so our plan was actually approved in February to be effective March 1st of 2020. So we were very fortunate that we already had this in place when COVID-19 really impacted our community. So we had a section of emergency assistance added to our plan that allowed us to provide emergency assistance to families that had experienced a crisis, such as a natural disaster or in 2019, 2020, fires, and 2020 brought the pandemic. So we already had that in our plan to provide services to families at 300% of the federal poverty limit, which is higher than what our normal TFAP stated for needy families. So we serve TANF assistance cases, prevention and family formation, diversion, and now emergency assistance, and also transitional. So that's what I'll be speaking about in large parts today. Not only were our non-occurring short-term benefits available to our TANF assistance cases, but also to our transitional, in addition to the transitional services that we offered within our plan. So some of the benefits that we made available to both TANF and transitional services cases were housing expenses, emergency shelter, utilities, personal and household essentials, food, clothing, family maintenance, counseling. And the reason for that is we envisioned having this need when families may have been displaced from their home. In the event there was a fire through the reservation, how would we, what type of needs would families require? And so within our plan, we noted that we would have that flexibility, that non-recurring short-term benefits were subject to limitations stated in our policy. So as Denise was sharing, that flexibility became really key, and we wanted to leave it as flexible as possible for our program. And depending on the disaster, such as the pandemic, what the needs would be different. So we wanted to give ourselves as much flexibility as possible to establish those limits for those emergencies. Would an emergency declaration be required by the tribe? What type of need would participants need to demonstrate? So all of that was in our plan when COVID kind of took its toll. As far as our transitional services, we saw an uptick in transitional cases, which may have been a artificially inflated result of TANF case closures. We were seeing that federal funding, unemployment benefits being extended kind of impacted our caseload in that way. So we have seen an increase in transitional services, and that's something that we've been successful in offering to families in addition to those non-recurring short-term benefits. So some of those transitional services for working adults who have closed their TANF case as a result of employment or a combination of earned and unearned income. We offer extended case management up to 24 months. So that was an amendment to our plan. As at the same time as emergency services, we extended that to from 18 to 24 months at the recommendation of our regional specialist. And that's kind of intended to slowly ease the burden of TANF case closure. So, and also celebrate a milestone of employment. So for 24 months, we can provide extended case management, job retention services, and supportive services, including childcare and transportation. Now, as Denise noted, that those are not part of non-recurring short-term benefits, but in our supportive service section of our TFAP, we did specify that we would offer that to working adults. So transportation might include fuel assistance, bus passes, vehicle repair, work support such as professional license fees, tools and equipment, uniforms. All of that is available to our transitional adults after their TANF case closes. We also offer long-term incentives. So employment retention incentives for 6 months and 2 long-term employment incentives to really celebrate those milestones of our working families. One of the additions to our plan recently was also transitional services for youth. So we noticed that while the adults were supported during the transition from TANF towards self-sufficiency, that often the children were removed from their network of friends and support and case management. So we wanted to continue with that by allowing them to participate in prevention and family formation programs, including after-school tutoring, youth empowerment programs that we offer, and as well as work readiness and career advancement workshops. So we offer in-house resume writing, interviewing skills, career pathways, various job development courses that adults and youth 16 and over are able to attend. And we require that those youth have a personal responsibility plan that's similar to what their parents would have to develop to meet program requirements. So that may focus on higher education or work readiness. So in addition to that participation component, we also specified some supportive services for youth as well. So that includes professional license fees, tools and equipment, uniforms, things that they may need to get started to build up their resume and to if they had an entry level position, can advance and make sure that it was a prevention service in our minds as well. As far as lessons learned that I'd like to share about our services during the pandemic and some of that flexibility that we found really valuable. We realized that while we had in our plan the non-recurring short-term benefits and the transitional services that became more utilized during the pandemic, we also needed policy to address emergency procedures. How would our staff operate when we were at home? And how would we continue to serve participants that transition to digital processes? So that was something that we scrambled for at the beginning, and I'm sure a lot of tribes did. But now we've seen that we're really able to understand our participants' needs and communicate in more of a digital world. So that was actually a positive that came out of 2020 for us. We also had to decide how we wanted to treat various income streams. So we were seeing, federal and tribal assistance funds coming for some of our participants. We serve primarily descendants, so not all of that CARES Act money that was coming from tribes was actually making it to our families. But we saw unemployment benefits, kind of eliminating the need for some of our supportive services, which was positive, but we didn't have the use of funds that we expected. We also realized that a community needs assessment will need to be routine we were able to put out a digital survey early on in 2020 and determine what equipment needs our participants had for virtual learning, for even participation in our programs, for submitting monthly eligibility reports. And so while we were changing our processes to allow digital submissions, email, we were sending email blasts for all of our program marketing efforts, texting instead of having our participants come in and meet with us in person. All of that, there was equipment needs that we needed to meet, and the flexibility within our plan and our policy allowed us to provide that as supportive service. And I have to preface that with, we had the funding available, we have carryover funds, and a lot of our decisions were based on having that funding available to us. Then finally, my final recommendation is again, just to give yourself flexibility. For example, in the resources and assets section of our plan, we stated language that exceptions may be granted in special circumstances. So that allowed us to not count resources or disregard a portion of unemployment income. And really that flexibility allowed us to develop those policies and processes that helped us to keep our doors open and continue to serve participants with high customer service and service delivery options that worked for them. So that in a nutshell is our transitional services and non-recurring short-term benefits that we offered over the last year. If there's any questions, I'm happy to answer those.
Well, thank you. And thank you, Denise, Sandy, and Katie, all for sharing what those steps might look like when you need to make some changes and use some of the flexibilities allowed, and as well as sharing some of the actual steps you went through, Sandy and Katie. Just to start us off, I'd ask anybody that has questions to please put them out there in the chat. We are open to taking questions for our speakers. And I heard Katie share a little bit about some lessons learned, and I was going to maybe go back and ask Sandy if she had some lessons learned that she would like to share with the group.
Probably the biggest lesson is that we needed to have this emergency services piece in here a long time ago. We would have been ready to have served immediately. That was just something that we didn't anticipate, we didn't do. I was glad to hear Katie talk about all of her services as far as transitional and all. We do all of those things too, and some excellent ideas on how we might expand those as well.
Okay, thank you. And Katie, you also spoke a little bit about a community assessment, and I guess we have someone that's interested in what was the goal, or what would be the goal of each year of sending out that assessment and looking at that community assessment?
Great question. So, we've always sent an annual survey out and to kind of guide us on what prevention and family formation services our participants might be interested in. And they usually focused on timing and what are the concerns for their children, and what type of cultural activities are they interested in, and what would be relevant, because we do serve so many different tribes. But when we sent ours out, I believe it was May, it focused on how the stay-home order in California was affecting families. Did they have the equipment and tools to meet their child's needs during distance learning? How could we support them? What type of communication was preferred? So, we were very much an in-person, by appointment only program. All of our intake was done in person, and all of a sudden we weren't doing that anymore. We had to make sure that if we were requiring intake appointments or recertifications during COVID via Zoom, did anybody even have internet? Did they have a smartphone? Did they have the equipment that was needed to do their jobs if they were at home as well? essential workers were permitted to work, but we needed to know how many of our participants who was determined to be essential. So, it allowed us to kind of find better ways to serve our community, and also shaped the way that we were communicating and offer virtual programming. So we changed all of our programs to 100% online. We were communicating through Facebook Live and YouTube and email blasts and notifications via mail like we always had, but also on our Access channel. We were communicating through our community resources, our reservation resources. So like emergency services department and social services, and to kind of get the word out there about our emergency application. So all of that information we were able to gather through our online survey.
Okay. And we've had the question actually from a couple of folks, if you would be willing to share maybe an example of your survey, or if that's something that we could post or get from you and post later, if that would be
sure, absolutely.
To do that. So
yeah, we just designed that on SurveyMonkey, and I can definitely share that.
Okay, thank you. And I guess for both Katie and Sandy, there was a question as far as looking at who you're serving with your services as you were developing them. Was assistance available for grandparents who are caring for grandchildren, which we see a lot in today's day?
It was for Eastern Band. We serve grandparents. We also serve through our 4E program, caretakers that we have for children through that program as well. A lot of times those referrals will come across to us from Family Safety, as it is called here in North Carolina at Eastern Band. So yes, we do offer that.
Okay. Katie?
Yes, we also serve needy and non-needy caretaker relatives, and they were permitted to utilize emergency assistance or non-recurring short-term benefits with their existing cases to meet the needs during COVID.
And one thing too, Karen, I wanted to add, and Katie mentioned that, and I didn't, but we were, through our emergency services in RST, we were able to serve our existing TANF clients as well with those funds that helped them tremendously too.
Okay, thank you. And Sandy, I think I'll start with you on this one because I know you said this was new to you, but if with your colleagues and your peers listening right now, and if somebody is out there that doesn't have the emergency services set up before, how would you suggest they start? What would be the starting place? I know that you had to jump in and move quickly, but looking back, maybe would you share where would you go back and start now on setting up emergency services?
Well, certainly our regional rep was just instrumental through the entire process. So I would encourage anyone that's thinking about doing that to contact their regional rep and let them give them some foundation for it as to what can and cannot happen in emergency services. We just weren't prepared. I wish we had been like Katie and done it a month early, but we didn't know we were going to have COVID either. So I would encourage anyone that doesn't have that piece in their plan to move forward and add those additional services in.
And Katie, did you have anything to, as far as a starting point for the development of services, emergency services?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I would, if you can time it correctly and you don't have to do an amendment, just put it as part of your plan renewal. But also again, we just got lucky with timing, but we were able to develop an application specifically for emergency cases. That was kind of an abbreviated version of our regular application. Like Sandy shared, there was less requirements. So we were looking at that as, if somebody's displaced from their home, they're not going to have all the same documents. They're not going to have immunization records. And that came in handy with the pandemic, because we also saw that, for time on aid and for duplication of aid checks that we do with our county partners, that there was a delay. And so you know, we weren't going to let that hold up our services to our participants. So having those in place and having sort of even though we did have to amend our policy, kind of having that that structure already in place and having the processes in place, we didn't have to spend a whole lot of time training or retraining our staff, and you know, having that flexibility to specify in an emergency declaration what would be unique to each type of disaster. That really came in handy for us as well.
Okay. A follow-up question was, is it possible to serve descendants? Is that something that a possibility? And I'll just kind of put that out there if somebody has a.
I'm sorry, I didn't understand what you said, Karen.
As far as serving through the emergency services, is it able to serve descendants?
So for us, that was already a part of our plan.
Population, okay.
It was already a part of our service population, and we serve primarily descendants because of income qualifications of Morongo. And we also, so there's no limit within our policy. There's no limit to generation or lineages. We serve all descendants.
And that's the way we are as well. Mm-hmm.
And I was just going to add, Karen, that's a tribal option. So it's not required, but each tribe has the opportunity to define within their tribal TANF plan the eligibility and who's going to be served. So that's certainly at tribal option.
Thank you, Denise. Okay. Again, some of this is a lot of questions. I went on to hear about the process and forms and maybe the exact steps as far as used for providing the assistance to a particular group. Is that something, if we reached out, that you would have some, be willing to share, maybe if somebody's looking to start up? So I'm seeing both of you.
We would at Eastern Band. We were like Katie. We developed a separate application that was not as cumbersome as our normal TANF application was, because we knew that we were not going to include the education requirements and all of those pieces. So we were able to streamline it considerably, and I'd be happy to share that application with anyone that'd like to have it.
Same for us as well. And our application, our emergency application, as well as our regular application, is posted on our website if anybody would like to check that out. Right there in the application, we have a section to request supportive services, so non-recurring short-term benefits that they may need at the time of application. And then we have a request for support service form for any follow-up. So while being limited to 4 months, cumulative, the needs may change from the time of application to, say, month 3.
Mm-hmm. In looking at in developing emergency services, and I heard, especially when we were talking about outreach and posting even on Facebook and the health department's Facebook, did you reach out to other departments in your tribes or organizations that to help develop that emergency service plan, or to in other instances of emergencies, maybe different than COVID, which it would be working closely perhaps with the health department? But are there other organizations, tribal organizations, that you pulled into that planning session, or would you recommend that you pull into that planning?
We did at Eastern Band. A secretary of PHHS, Public Health and Human Services here, she played a key role in it. She had some specific things that she knew other programs in the division were not covering, so she threw several things out about that, as did our vice chief. He did the same thing, and just trying to reach as many people and cover as broadly as we could. And then we're part of a managers meeting every 2 weeks here. Those managers helped us to get the word out too. It it always helps when you know what other programs are doing and what services they cover, so that if you can't help someone, that you normally would know how, to refer them over to those other agencies. We tried not to duplicate things as much as we could, but sometimes you cross over a little bit anyway.
And Katie?
We did as well. So we worked with our emergency services department and our social services department on the reservation to get the word out to the Morongo community. But like I said, most of our participants are from off reservation and non-Morongo. So we worked closely with county partners. So anyone who was applying for CalWorks automatically receives information about the Tribal TANF program. So in Riverside County, we're one of 4 Tribal TANF programs, and in San Bernardino County, we're the only Tribal TANF program. So anybody who indicated that they were native on an emergency assistance application or a CalWorks application would receive information about our program. So we made sure that our county partners had our brochures and our emergency application, and they were aware of the services that we are offering. And then we really relied on direct mail to participants, email to participants, and are directing folks to our website for that information as well.
Well, I was thinking of also with your fires that you were starting the services with and helping getting word out to those families that are displaced by the fires would be a excellent way to have information. Let's see if we have some other, as far as you were going through this process, whether they're positive, neutral, negative, did you encounter any surprises or something that you had not planned for or that occurred as you were preparing and implementing these services?
I think it was unexpected for us to that we didn't see as much need as we anticipated, which was a good thing. Our families, some were furloughed for a short time, or very few of them lost their job. They did some reduced wages, and we were able to assist there. But a lot of our funding that we set aside was not utilized, so that was a bit of a surprise to us. And then the way that the income that we had to account for the unemployment income and how we would treat that, and we had to make adjustments to our policy as far as TANF case closures go after so many months of a $0 and that kind of was surprising or caught us off guard. But now that we have that and we've actually been able to put our emergency assistance cases to use, in the future, we'll have that framework already developed.
Okay. Sandy?
We're kind of along the same lines. When you talk about the numbers, we anticipated more than what we actually had. But part of that is because of the CARES funds from the government. So when those funds hit the tribe and they started doing different things, we saw a decrease in our numbers. We were concerned that we had an X amount of dollars, and we were really worried that we might not have enough to serve, but we were able to do what we needed to do with what we had.
Okay. I'll just see if there's any other last questions, but we have about 8 minutes left before we close out for the day. And I would just ask all 3 of you, and just in the discussion, in the preparation of making some changes and taking advantage of some of the flexibilities that are out there and the steps to implement them, if you could just think back and kind of give us maybe your final thoughts on what would be important for folks to walk away with as they go back home and maybe see if they've had an idea spark through this discussion that they want to implement. What might they be, what they want to do, or what would be helpful to them to take away from this talk today? I'll start with Denise, maybe.
Sure. I think what we want to make sure that everyone takes away is that there's lots of flexibility that exists in both tribal TANF and Native Employment Works. And we would really encourage all of you to consider, is there something that you'd like to do, implement, that would be of benefit to your families and your community? And what can we do to support you to get those changes implemented? So we would really look forward to hearing from you and what we can do to be of support.
Thank you. Sandy, would you, what should people walk away with today?
I would strongly encourage anyone, again, that doesn't have that emergency services piece in their plan to do that. Just because we don't know what tomorrow brings. We wish we had been a little bit more prepared here at Eastern Band. We kind of played catch up there for a few months, but I would encourage anyone that doesn't have that piece in their plan to look into it and contact their regional rep and let them guide them through the process.
Okay. And Katie?
I definitely agree with that. I would recommend communication with your regional specialist. I know that in Region 9, we have a good relationship with our rep, and she was able to make recommendations based off of what other tribes were doing, and you know, we have that open line of communication to see, you know, there is so much flexibility, and just kind of coming up with the idea is half of it. I would also recommend, you know, sharing with other tribes best practices. So in California, we have a really great coalition of tribes that meet regularly, and we're able to share best practices and lessons learned, and kind of see what others are doing. So, for example, the fires weren't impacting our reservation directly, but the tribes in Northern California that you know, struggled, and what they had to put into their plan, and we took that language directly from those tribes. So having that network of tribes has been incredibly helpful to myself as a director, and also, you know, to our participants, that they are able to benefit from services that other tribal programs have come up with.
Okay, well, thank you. And just as a final note, for those that have not seen in the chat, but there was a wonderful information shared that they participated along with Sandy, and just a community meeting and a community outreach effort to help those families that were either homebound or unable to apply, to help them get connected to that assistance. So I really thank you, Katie and Sandy and Denise, in sharing about your experience and some lessons learned with us today. And I appreciate the time and spending this time with us. We are right on just a few minutes before 2 o'clock, and to get you out of here at 2 o'clock, I'm going to go ahead and pass it off to Caprisa Randolph Robinson, who is with our Region 5 office, and she's going to have our closing remarks today.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks to all of our wonderful speakers and moderators for sharing with us today. Thanks to all of our tribal programs and even our federal partners that joined us. We hope that there was something you were able to take away during our discussions on re-envisioning within your programs, or maybe it was the fireside chat on rethinking how your office can look during COVID. Or perhaps you learned something new during exploring flexibilities to strengthen your programs. We look forward to seeing you all tomorrow morning as we continue to explore coaching and motivating client engagement in the time of COVID. And we also have set aside time for our Native Employment Works program in the afternoon to share specifics to their programs. We will end on Thursday as we review strategies for identifying and interrupting the impact of trauma on caseworkers and managers. Thanks again for attending, and see you guys tomorrow.